Okay, great. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I call to order the July 12th, 2021 City Council Successor Agency to the Redevelopment Agency Housing Authority regular meeting. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So the next item is changes to the order of agenda. I'd like to propose that we move item 11A to after item 7. Are there any objections to that? All right. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda this evening?
Nothing from staff this evening, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, then the next item is a presentation for Parks and Recreation Month. And I understand Avi Newby, our Parks and Recreation Director, is on hand this evening to receive the proclamation. Welcome, Amy.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Good to see you. So we are recognizing July 2021 as Parks and Recreation Month, whereas the San Carlos community recognizes the many benefits of parks and recreation and expresses deep appreciation for the support provided by the San Carlos Parks and Recreation Department throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes physical, emotional, and mental health and wellness through organized and self-directed fitness, play, and activities that facilitate social connections, human development, therapy, the arts, and lifelong learning. And whereas the local parks, recreation, trails, and open space are a respite for all community members. And whereas throughout the pandemic, the Parks and Recreation Department has created memorable experiences through engaging virtual and physically distanced programs, dynamic online events, and new learning opportunities designed to keep families active. And whereas Parks and Recreation strengthens community identity by providing facilities and services that reflect and celebrate community character, heritage, culture, history, aesthetics, and landscape. And whereas recreation fosters human development, providing positive alternatives for children and youth during non-school hours to reduce crime and mischief, thereby helping children and youth develop and grow into healthy and productive adults. And whereas thousands of children, adults, and seniors benefit from the wide range of services, facilities, and programs provided by the San Carlos Parks and Recreation Department, including the Youth Center and Senior Meal Program, and events such as the Goblin Walk, Night of Holiday Lights, Music in the Park, and Family Campout. And whereas the City of San Carlos urges all its residents to recognize the parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the well-being of our community, enriching the lives of its residents and visitors, as well as adding value to the community's homes and neighborhoods. Now therefore be proclaimed that I, Laura Palmer Lohan, Mayor of the City of San Carlos, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby declare July 2021 as Parks and Recreation Month, and in doing so urge the community to continue to use and enjoy our parks and recreational opportunities. Dated this 12th day of July 2021. Thank you, Amy, so much to you and your crew for all that you do for the community. Do any of my colleagues wish to make a comment at this time? I see Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say congratulations to Amy. She makes a difficult job look easy, and I'm very happy that we have her.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Collins. All right. And Amy, would you like to make any remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Palmer Lohan and Councilmember Collins, for your kind words. I think this means more this year than it ever has in the past. And as you've heard me say before, this summer we are, getting back to our pre-pandemic and normal programs and operations and events. We just kicked off our summer concert series this past Friday night, which had a great turnout. And our adult community center started their phase 1 of reopening today. So it's a really special day, them welcoming some of the seniors back, and our camps are in full swing. We are preparing our fall activity guide to get mailed out to residents in the next few weeks. So it's just great to just have all of our programs back and feel like us again. And so excited to just, see the community back together at our community events and in our programs and our facilities. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you for recognizing Parks and Recreation.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you again for all you do and navigating us through that. And I'm glad to hear that the events are so well attended. Off to a great start. All right. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item 5, council communications and announcements, which are brief items from members of City Council regarding upcoming events in the community and correspondence that they have received. They are informational in nature and no action will be taken on these items at this meeting. So I see we have Vice Mayor McDowell followed by Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first comment actually builds perfectly on your proclamation. I wanted to give a big shout out to Amy and the Parks and Rec department for a wonderful first concert series in Burton Park. I attended on Friday and there were so many people. The entire field was full. There were people of all ages and kids and strollers. And it was just, you could tell that everyone just really needed that. And they were so happy to be outside and listening to music together. I've never seen a concert more well attended, actually. So, and several people commented to me that they really liked the new location out in the field. So something to think about, but wonderful, wonderful job. And thank you for providing that for the community. And then the second item that I just wanted to let the community know about is to please mark your calendars for September 11th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the Industrial Arts Horsepower Car Show. It's a wonderful event down near Devil's Canyon in our industrial arts area. And it's a lot of fun for the whole family. And you can learn more at horsepowercarshow.com. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Rack. Councilmember, we can't hear you.
I lowered my hand, but forgot to unmute. You would think by now I would have figured that out. I just want to say, last Friday, I had a chance I went and had my first, I think, sort of lunch at the ACC, sort of the pick up and go lunch that they had over there. And it was awesome. And just the staff there is just amazing in terms of what they're doing. They mentioned they've sort of almost doubled the number of lunches that they've been serving since the pandemic in the community. And I just want to sort of take my hats off to the ACC staff for all the great work they're doing for our community. And the food was delicious. So check it out.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Rack. Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to give a shout out, in our council packet for this evening's meeting is the quarterly reports from all of our various commissions. And I just, always want to pause and recognize everything that our commissions do for our city and for the good functioning of the of City Hall. And I in particular want to call out our Youth Advisory Committee. Their report, it's well worth reading if anyone hasn't caught it. Very impressive work they did, in particular during the Mental Health Awareness Month. They actually organized and led free mental health workshops in our middle schools and high schools. And they did that in partnership with One Life Counseling. And I just found that very inspiring and very action oriented. And I applaud them for that. And if there's any ways us as a council can work even closer with our youth committee, I would definitely welcome that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we will move to public comment. Persons wishing to address the City Council on items not on the posted agenda may do so at this time. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. If the item you are speaking on is not listed on the agenda, please be advised that the City Council may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed under the Brown Act. The City Council's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future City Council agenda for more comprehensive action or report and formal public discussion and input at that time. Crystal, are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment this evening?
Yes, we do have a hand raised from Craig Strong. Craig, you should be able to unmute and start your video at this time.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, Mayor Palmer, Lohan, and members of the City Council. My name is Craig Strong, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and speak quickly. I am a member of the San Carlos Little League Board, and as you may or may not know, we hosted a All-Star Juniors District 52 tournament here in San Carlos at Madison Field at Burton Park. That was very successful and took a lot of effort, as you can imagine, from both the Little League organization as well as the city of San Carlos. And in appreciation for the efforts, in particular by Molly Crossfield, Tyler Muella, and Vicky Gaia at the parks, San Carlos has a couple mementos to present with you. One is a signed baseball from the local San Carlos District 52 All-Star team, Juniors All-Star team, and a photograph of the team. And speaking of that team, they actually won the championship of the tournament, and they're moving on to Northern California regional tournament that's taking place beginning this weekend. We'd also like to present City Council. We already did that part, excuse me. Just a little quick background, though. I'd like to say for those of you who don't know, Little League juniors are players 14 years old or younger, and the San Carlos League had 50 players during the regular season, and from there pulled the 12 All-Stars. And this team was managed by Steve Magner. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Craig, for joining us this evening, and congratulations to you and the team. And thank you for your contribution. It's very impressive. I know it takes a lot of time and effort, especially postseason.
Yeah, you are more than welcome. It was a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Crystal, are there any other members of the public who wish to make comment at this time?
Yes.
I see Councilmember Collins has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Were there no more speakers?
We do have one more.
All right, I will wait. I thought maybe that was the only one. Go ahead.
Okay. Debbie Baldocci, you're up next, and you should be able to unmute.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having us. I sent an email to all of you and to the city clerk, and I'd just like to make 2 comments to request future agenda items. The first one is I request clarification and correction of the climate mitigation and adaptation plan. At the last meeting, I believe the numbers that were used about new workers or new jobs in San Carlos was projected to be less than 400 when the real numbers are close to 7,500. So if you would put that on the agenda for the future to correct the climate mitigation and adaptation plan to reflect that would be greatly appreciated. And then with regard to the safety element of the general plan, the hazard mitigation plan, and the San Carlos strategic plan, I went through the agenda items and I really didn't see in there specific information about sea level rise as it relates to flooding and the FEMA flood zones in East San Carlos, where there's going to be millions of square feet of biotech and commercial development. So I formally request that these plans include the addition of sections that specifically describe the risk of sea level rise from the bay, not fossil fuels, and mention the FEMA flood zones, including the proposed mitigations, such as flood proofing and improving infrastructure for pumping stations and that. So if you look at the last page of the strategic plan, you'll see that it lists climate threats, but flooding and sea level rise specifically in the East San Carlos area is not one of them. So thank you for considering adding those. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. And Jeff, if I could ask a member of staff to follow up with Debbie on these questions and inquiries, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I'll have somebody reach out.
Okay, thank you. All right. Crystal, are there any other members of the community who wish to make a comment?
No further hands.
Okay. Councilmember Collins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank Craig Strong for his comments as a alum of the San Carlos Little League. I'm happy that their teams represented the city better than my team. My all-star team lost its first game and never went anywhere. So I'm glad that Little League is doing better these days.
Thank you. Councilmember Rack?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on Ms. Baldacci's comments on the sea level rise, just to mention to Jeff, and I'm happy to talk with her directly, that CCAG does have a sea level rise committee that's through the county that we are represented through that, and they have a lot of work on that. So it may be worthwhile for her to speak with the staff at CCAG about some of the work that's being done on sea level rise countywide, and which would include San Carlos in our area.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we'll move on to consent calendar. Does anybody wish to pull an item from the consent calendar?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull items 7D and 7H.
Okay. All right, anyone else?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull item L, please.
Okay. All right. So since there's so many items that are being pulled this evening, I would entertain a motion at this point for the rest of the items.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve consent calendar 7A through C, E through G, I, J, and K.
Sorry, through the chair, actually, item K is no longer needed as the applicants have pulled their application.
All right, so the motion's as amended. Is there any second? All right, Crystal, can you call roll?
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. Okay, so Adam, you want to move forward on discussion with item D?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on item D, I just wanted to pull the question. I appreciate as John mentioned, all the great work done by all the commissions. But I did want to get some clarification. When I read through that, I noticed a number of unexcused absences and a canceled meeting for the Transportation and Circulation Commission. And I wanted to just sort of get an understanding kind of what's going on over there, because it seemed like multiple members of that commission have had multiple unexcused absences and there was a meeting canceled.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Stephen Machida, Public Works Director. Yes, in regards to the Transportation and Circulation Commission, as the City Council knows, we typically hold a meeting each month, third Tuesday of each month. And during this year, I think as a result of some of the COVID and kind of being from home, it has been somewhat of a struggle to actually form a quorum. So as you kind of note in the report, we have actually 3 members who had 2 unexcused absences. Per the commission policy, 3 unexcused absences in any fiscal year will actually deem that position vacant, in which case the city clerk would kind of search for, perhaps recruit for another position. So if you look closely at the report, many of these occurred kind of late in the third quarter. And so for the members of the commission that actually had the 2 unexcused absences, they were actually provided a letter or an email from the city clerk, kind of indicating that they were on the verge of actually, once they received their 3rd unexcused absence, they were on the verge of actually vacating that spot. However, at the start of each new fiscal year, it resets the number of unexcused absence resets. So as of July 1st, that it resets. And so, basically all commissioners on TNC have a clean slate going forward. So did that answer your question?
That did. I just want to make sure that they were sort of made aware of the policy, and obviously it's disappointing to see that many unexcused absences. And I believe one meeting was canceled because of lack of quorum as well. So I understand that the process resets, but hopefully this next fiscal year there'll be better attendance. So that's all. I don't have any intention to intend to support this, and I just wanted to sort of get clarification on that. So I appreciate that, Stephen.
Okay, so I'll just kind of lend my comments. I just want to echo Councilmember Dugan's previous comments during Councilmember report, that I do appreciate the work of the various commissions, and I was also equally impressed by the work of the Youth Advisory Committee in their contribution to the community. I know serving in these bodies takes time and effort and energy, and I certainly appreciate all that people are doing.
Giant fat robins in the backyard. They're like fat as pigeons.
Crystal?
Yes, I'm working on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other comments on this particular item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve item 7D, accept the quarterly reports from city commissions and boards.
Second.
Crystal, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. All right, Councilmember Ruck, would you like to discuss the next item, item H?
Sure, and I emailed with the city attorney this morning on that. I just wanted to, as I read through the packets for the two sewer items and the Alameda items, I noticed that in the bid process, that the bids themselves and the information in there is not gender neutral. It refers to him, his, her, he throughout the documents. And so I would like just to request before we send these out that one, we correct that to make them gender neutral, and two, that we go through that process to correct those, because it's just, it shouldn't be that way. I don't think we should have documents that are written that are not gender neutral. So that was my only point. I'm happy to support this item. I just wanted to raise that and request that staff make those corrections and go through other documents that we have to fix that.
Thank you, Councilmember Ruck, for bringing that to the fore. I'm in support of that approach.
Yeah, for city attorney here, we will take a look at the documents to review them to make sure we meet with that policy that just enunciated that they should be gender neutral, and we will fix that before they go out.
Thank you. So if there's no other, I'm happy to make a motion on that one too.
Yep.
I move to adopt item 7H, adopt a resolution approving the plans and specifications and authorizing advertisement and a call for bids for the 2020-22 sewer lateral replacement project C1737-22.
I'll second.
All right, Crystal, if you could call the roll, please.
Okay, Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Rack, for bringing that to the floor. Really appreciate that.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. Okay, so we'll move on to item L. Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to pull this item. It has to do with the city taking over the costs of an expanded crossing guard program with our schools. And I think this is a wonderful example of how the city works with our school district to support safe routes to school. So I've asked for a very brief presentation just so that the community can be better informed about this. Thank you.
So Crystal, this is Steve. Could you kind of advance the slides, please? But Good evening again. This is Stephen Machida, Public Works Director. Actually, before I start the presentation, I would like to kind of make a statement that in regards to the staff report that, basically there was not specific direction from council to pay 100% of the crossing guard contract. However, but based on council's past discussions with the school district as well as staff, it appears that this is what council intended to do. So the staff reports reflects that tone. So anyway, as you can see on the screen, the crossing guard locations are 11 sites now. Woodland Arroyo, Britton Cedar, Royal Cedar, Dartmouth at Terralinda campus entrance, Exeter and Club, San Carlos Dartmouth, Bayview Club, Wellington Dartmouth, Wellington Devonshire, and San Carlos. And then the two newest intersection, Cordilleras and Bell, and Melody and Heather at the school entrance. So next slide, please. So this map kind of depicts the actual locations, and I'm sorry, it's very, very small, so I do apologize, but starting in the lower right-hand corner, you can see at Britton and Cedar, Cedar and Arroyo, and Woodland and Arroyo. This is on the lower right-hand corner. And then as you move kind of northwesterly on San Carlos Avenue at Wellington, Devonshire, there's a crossing guard located there. And then predominantly, if you move northwest, again on San Carlos Avenue, there you would find at Wellington, Dartmouth, and then Dartmouth at Terralinda School entrance, San Carlos and Dartmouth, Exeter and Club, and Club and Bayview, Club and Bayview. Next slide, please. And then these are the two newest locations. So Heather School on Melody, this is the mid-block crosswalk, and at Bell and Cordilleras. So these are the 11 locations of the crossing guards that the school district had requested that be put in place for the upcoming school year. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate your time in bringing these maps to us. And just to clarify, the request tonight is to increase the cost of the program from $100,000 to $234,000. So more than doubling our support of this program, which I'm very much in favor of. I think Safe Routes to School is a top priority. I know as a parent, it gives me a lot of peace of mind when my kids are riding their bikes to school and walking to school that they're going to cross safely. So I'm definitely in favor of this. And, I think that having Safe Routes to School helps people get out of single occupancy vehicles and encourages our youth to get a little activity and exercise in the mornings and afternoons. So thank you very much for bringing this to us. I'm proud to support this. I'm happy to work for a city that supports our school district. And this is a pretty substantial amount to take off the books for the school district. So very pleased to do that. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Rack, and then Councilmember Dugan and Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to first thank Vice Mayor McDowell for pulling this item. I do think it's good to highlight the work being done in partnership with the school district. And I do think that, it is an item that fits naturally for us to work with them based on, public safety. And just want to thank Stephen and his team for all the great work around this to help identify the sites and work with the school district on this. I think it's a great win all around for our community and look forward to supporting this.
Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Vice Mayor McDowell. Glad to get a report on this. Very supportive of crossing guards and this program. I'm glad we're doing it. It's the first time I've ever, wondered who funds and organizes the crossing guards. I guess I was a bit surprised that it was the city and not the school district. And so just a quick question, Stephen, is it, is this just the city helping the school district, or is there a particular theory that, cities usually support crossing guards, and is this what's done elsewhere? I've never encountered this before.
So what we've done in San Carlos is basically the school district actually manages the crossing guard contract. So basically they kind of select the crossing guards, and they specifically identify but probably back in 2014, I think that's when the school and the city got involved and basically decided, what can we do to kind of assist each other. So at that point in time, the city actually agreed to pay like 50% of the cost of the school crossing guards. And then over time, as more of the need kind of branched out for other intersections, the school district asked if they could expand the programming, which they have done so. And it really is probably in the last couple of years that because of some of the money shortfall with the school district that they've asked the city to kind of fund more of the program. So our role is really kind of funding the program, whereas the management and administration of the contract itself is all done by the school district.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And I'm happy to support this measure. And I'm sure our funding has increased the number of crossing guards that are available to our community, which is a win for public safety. So very supportive of that. And as others have pointed out, it's a significant contribution by the city directly to our schools. And then it's worth observing, this will be, probably a program that will go on forever. So that's just, very strong commitment of support by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to add my thanks to Vice Mayor McDowell for bringing this up. I do have one question about the staff report under alternatives. It says additional cost of $43,100 and appropriate $134,300. Is that correct? I thought it was $234,000.
That is correct. However, we do have $100,000 in the current budget to cover to make it $200,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions on this item? All right. We'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve item 7L, adopt a resolution agreeing to fully fund the San Carlos School District for 2 additional crossing guard locations for a total of 11 locations at total cost of $243,300 for fiscal year 2021-22 and appropriate $134,300 from the general fund.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor McDowell and a second by Reck. Crystal, if you can call the roll.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer-Lohan?
Yes. All right. So now we'll move to item 11A, consideration of appointing 2 Youth Advisory Council voting members for the 2021-2022 term and 2 voting members for the 2021-2023 term, and recognizing 2 retiring voting members. And this evening we have with us on this item is Caitlin Matoso, Recreation Coordinator. Welcome, Caitlin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Caitlin Matoso, and I'm the Recreation Coordinator for Youth Development. We are looking forward to swearing in our new Youth Advisory Council members, as well as recognizing some outgoing members. 2 of our members being appointed tonight will be renewing their terms. Ezra Bergenson-Michelson is seeking his 4th appointment to the YAC. He is a senior at the Urban School of San Francisco. Liam Tierney is seeking his 2nd appointment to the YAC. Liam is a senior at St. Francis High School. Ezra and Liam will be serving 1-year terms since they are seniors in high school. Next, we have Samina and Alice, who will be serving 2-year terms. Samina Ginwala is seeking her 1st appointment to the YAC. She is a sophomore at Cromwell High School. Alice Finkelstein is seeking her 1st appointment to the YAC as well, and she is a junior at Cromwell High School. Before we appoint our new members, I would like to recognize some outgoing members. Maya Devalsher-Vuvu was involved with YAC for 3 years. She served as our secretary for the past 2 years and will be attending Northeastern University. Sebastian Foon served 1 2-year term. He was our chair this past year, and he'll be attending Harvard in the fall. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Crystal.
Actually, before I can swear them in, I will need council's appointment.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering what the procedure was. So if I'd be willing to entertain a motion on this item.
Madam Mayor, I'll
Yes.
move to appoint Ezra Bergson Mickelson and Liam Tierney to the Youth Advisory Council as a voting member for the 2021-22 term, and appoint Samino Jinwala and Alice Finkelstein to the Youth Advisory Council as a voting member for the 2021-2023 term, and recognize outgoing Youth Advisory Council voting members Maya Daval Churavu and Sebastian Fune for their years of service.
Thank you. I'll entertain it. Is there a second for this?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, I want to congratulate Ezra, Liam, Samina, and Alice for your appointments, and thank you for your ongoing service and your commitment to stepping up to leadership, and also to thank Maya and Sebastian for your service and wish you well on your next journey. Exciting universities that have that you found for yourselves. So wish you well on that journey. And now we'll move to, I believe, City Clerk Crystal Mui to do the oath of office.
Yes.
We have to vote first.
Oh, sorry. I did it in my head. All right, Crystal, can you call the roll? I knew I needed to go back to Crystal for something.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer-Lohan?
Of course, yes.
Okay. And if I can get Ezra, Liam, if you are joining us, Liam, I'm not sure you were able to make it, Samina and Alice, if I can get you on camera. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I do see you 3. Okay, did you get a chance to print out your oath of office? And you can go ahead and unmute at this time. I'm seeing a head.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I did not.
You did not. Okay. And was that Alice or Samina that confirmed, or both?
Yeah.
Okay. For those of you that did print it out, if you can go ahead and show it on the camera that you have not signed it. Okay. Just Samina. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Samina, so if you can raise your right hand, I'll go ahead and do your oath. And for Alice and Ezra, I'll schedule a time to do that offline with you after. So Samina, if you can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties for which you are about to enter?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and sign your oath. And show it on the camera. Okay, and so you are all set, and I will work with our other newly appointed officials after offline. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda is a report to council. We'll receive a report from Police Chief Bell with respect to an update on policing services in the community. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. And do I have control, Crystal?
Yes, you do.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager, City staff, and members of the public. My name is Christina Bell, and I am your Bureau Chief of Police. The purpose of this presentation, The purpose of this presentation is to fulfill a specific request from City Council requesting an update on thefts within the city and the impact of the pandemic on the judicial system. I clicked the next slide, Crystal. There we go. All right, little delay. So on April 10th in 2020, the Judicial Council of California mandated a statewide emergency zero bail schedule. Each presiding judge in every county had the opportunity or were forced to implement. And in our county, they did the zero bail. It was also recommended that property and nonviolent crimes be issued citations and not booked into the county jails. This also included every person held in pretrial custody, meaning in our jail already, but haven't been officially charged or, convicted. This meant that bail was zero for misdemeanors and felonies, except for serious and violent felonies. A full audit of all in-custody inmates was conducted, and those eligible were released in accordance with the mandate. This allowed the Sheriff's Office to maintain an inmate population that was manageable during the initial stages of COVID-19 to help prevent an outbreak within our facilities. Citations were given with a promise to appear on the streets with a court date 1 year away from the date of the offense, whereas pre-COVID was only 2 months away. On June 19th, 2020, the emergency bail schedule was changed from $0 to $250 for all misdemeanors and felonies not in the exemption category. So this meant it was no longer zero, it was now $250, which provided some leverage for individuals to book for the lesser offenses into custody. However, they still were only held for the $250 bail, which in comparison normally would have been like $10,000, $50,000, depending on the crime. The emergency bail schedule is to remain in effect or until modified by the Court Executive Committee on July 31st, 2021, or whichever comes first, but we're right around the corner from July 31st. On March 1st, 2021, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office resumed normal booking operations for all arrestees, meaning that we weren't asking cities to site out on the streets, but it was okay to go ahead and book. However, the $250 bail still remains in effect today. So this chart, this data was collected from the Board, State, and Community Corrections website, also known as BSCC. And I have the link, which is public to everyone, so you'll see that in the chat. You can look at any county in the state of California for reference. So the first chart shows the average daily population, that's the ADP. So you can see in February of 2020, it was in the 1,000 range. And around the April 10th is that when we hit the dip around the 500. And then slowly it's increased up until where we are when we pulled the data on July 3rd, where we're slowly creeping back up. The below line is the bookings for each day. So you could see how the bookings were very high in February, and then it decreased due to the booking restrictions. The below chart illustrates the releases from our custody, San Mateo County only, and just shows you through July 3rd, 2021. So if you note the significant drop in population between February and June, and we stayed below 500 inmates, which significantly helped the risk of outbreak, which we were successful with in not having an outbreak inside of our correctional facilities, which was very important. There's some staff observations related to crime trends during this time. There was a 24% increase in felony arrests between March and December of 2020 compared to 2019, just because there were more felons out on the streets. Outside agencies often published information bulletins identifying suspects and suspect vehicles who were arrested and believed to be of interest to outside agencies due to related crimes. Numerous cases involving suspects arrested and found to be repeat offenders within our agency and outside agencies. Deputies often reported making statements, or suspects would make a statement like, hey, you're not going to take me to jail. You can't take me to jail anyways. Just give me my ticket and I'll be on my way. For example, one suspect was arrested and cited due to COVID booking restrictions nearly a half dozen times for the same offense of a stolen vehicle, both by San Carlos deputies and outside agencies. That all occurred in the summer of 2020. We also had a parolee at large arrest for possession of a stolen vehicle, and he also had possession of a firearm, but he was released with a citation because it's not a violent felony. Even though your deputies were met with these restrictions, this did not stop them from actively patrolling your neighborhoods to combat crime. So for this report out, we captured data from January 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021, and compared the same months for 2019, 2020, and then the very first column you'll see is a 5-year average from 2014 to 2018. The following data categories were gathered: residential burglaries, commercial burglaries, vehicle burglaries, auto theft, and larceny. Vehicle burglaries fall into the category of larceny. However, we separated it to keep the community informed. Catalytic converters also fall into the category of larceny. What is larceny? It's a Part 1 crime, one of 8 categories which we report to the DOJ annually. And according to the FBI website, and excuse me, I'm going to read this so we all know, larceny is identified as the unlawful taking, carrying, leading, or riding away of property from the possession or constructive possession of another. Examples are thefts of bicycles or automobile accessories, shoplifting, pocket picketing, or the stealing of any property or article that is not taken by force or violence, or by fraud. Attempted larcenies are also included and counted. Catalytic converter thefts and vehicle burglaries accounted for about 44% of the entire larceny category in 2021 and 57% in 2020. So I love maps because we see dots, we see the city. Catalytic converters, we've had 45 so far. Last year we had 50. So downward trend, however, is still a lot because our five-year average was 0. This is a regional issue. It's not just a San Carlos issue. So the following 5 slides will provide a visual representation of the locations that each crime occurred. Please note that each map is zoomed out and one dot might represent multiple offenses. And just for reference with respect to catalytic converters, and I'll get into a little detail in a second, but it's such a national issue that AT&T, they have a large vehicle fleet. They've gone as far as painting all of their catalytic converters blue and putting a big old A on it. So that way, when the crook saws it off, it's going to be hard to sell it somewhere else because you can't resell it and they'll be able to be identified. So those are a few things that the region is doing to combat these crimes. We've had a few calls for service with residents witnessing these thefts. I just want to remind everyone that it's very important that you call us immediately and please do not confront these suspects. The faster you call us, the faster we can get there to apprehend these individuals. Vehicle burglaries, 48. We see trends on the east side, and this crime is specifically where someone forces their way into a locked vehicle. So it has to be a locked vehicle to be considered a burglary, a vehicle burglary. Auto theft, also a trend in the region. Majority have been on the ECR corridor and the east side. A lot of later models, trucks, Hondas, Toyotas, Silverados. That's a Chevy, right? Yes, a Chevy Silverado. It is on a rise in the region, and I have a lot of conversations with our vehicle theft task force sergeant and staff about kind of their tips and tricks and what they're doing, and we're deploying those resources in town by additional cameras, et cetera. I've seen also in some of our neighboring cities that they have up to 100 a month. So all in all, we're on the bottom 3 of the county for auto thefts. Residential burglary, we're at 30 from January 1st to June 30th. 21 of the 30 occurred due to an unlocked structure. What does that mean? They left their side gate unlocked, which led to a side garage door unlocked, left their garage door wide open, left their garage control thing inside their unlocked vehicle, but it was in plain view. So they check the door, open it, pop the garage, go in, grab the bike, and they're gone. Of the 14 of the 21, only a bike was stolen from the garage. Lastly, 3 out of the 30 total the suspect actually made it all the way inside the house. Only 3. Anecdotally, on June 24th at 1 in the morning, a resident on the 300 block of Oakview Drive called us, and deputies were dispatched to the address on the report of a prowler. Prowler is someone's on my property, and I don't know why they're there. An initial area check yielded nothing. However, 40 minutes later, a deputy assigned to the San Carlos Bureau spotted the suspect on his bike headed towards Redwood City by Stacks. The deputy attempted to pull over the suspect, but he did not stop. The suspect evaded the deputy, left the bike, and got away. The good news is that suspect was responsible for 3 unlocked residential burglaries that evening, but deputies were able to recover all of the property that was taken from everyone and returned. This is a great example of how our community, being proactive and calling us right away, has a positive outcome. We'll catch them. It's just going to take us a little time. Commercial burglaries. So again, trending on the ECR corridor, east side, easy access to the freeways, El Camino. Another anecdotal story, Junk King had just installed cameras inside of their business. And the owner was at home in Hayward, I think it's Hayward, East Bay, is just looking at his cameras just for fun. And he sees a subject inside of a vehicle inside of his warehouse. He knew all of his workers had gone home. He called us, we surrounded the area, called the guy out, no injuries, guy was arrested for a commercial burglary. Another great example of utilizing tools to help us, with the surveillance cameras. It was huge for us to get there, and he gave us a play-by-play of where this individual was. And just some notable investigations, not to bring this up all the time, but it's just a reminder that these cases that we had, the Operation Shattered Glass and Operation Proof of Purchase, where it just started off as a small little petty crime where we had just enough evidence to give us a lead to a suspect, which led to these huge operations and taking down massive fencing operations outside of this county, but people are coming here to take things from us. Also, I wanted to highlight a case where it was a simple mail theft, and one of our CSOs took the report because there was no suspect information. Got a call back from the reporting party saying that I think someone took an expensive car out in my name. So our deputy was able to do great investigative work, wrote search warrants, and found the suspect that stole the mail, opened up an apartment in San Jose in this individual's name, a San Carlos resident, and 2 high-end vehicles. So all of that was taken care of just by one little lead. All that to say of how important it is for our community to communicate with us as much as they can. Sheriff's Office response. So what do we do when we know there's a trend? So every week we meet as a command staff in all the bureaus and we figure out what's going on in our areas, and we utilize our resources and our information to do the directed patrols, have high visibility saturations. That's when we'll use some overtime and get some undercover individuals in there. We'll bring in the street crimes team. Our crime analysts will do they're analyzing. The Detective Bureau is great at finding all of the suspects, and then justice is served. Also, just a note with the countywide task force, that's the narcotics task force as well as the vehicle theft task force. So in terms of arrests, what did that look like with all these site outs and such? So we pulled just theft related arrests in 2020, and that was 98 for the year. But of the 98, 34 were actually booked into jail, but 64 were cited and released on scene, which is a significant amount. So that was all of 2020. So then from now in 2021, we're kind of seeing the pendulum swinging, so we're getting back to even. And my hope is that after the 250 bail goes away, that people will stay in a little bit longer, and their case will get seen all the way through, and there'll be some repercussions for what they've done if proven guilty. So next slide is the intelligence-led policing model. And I know we talked about this before, but just as a reminder, we use the intelligence-led policing model to combat crime in our county. Our team of crime analysts look at trends and formulate internal reports to assist in directed patrol efforts and awareness. We rely on our community to report all crimes to us, regardless of the perceived severity. Each report adds to the information we use to implement effective plans to reduce crime rates in the city of San Carlos. So the next 3 slides are our public service announcements that we've recently deployed on social media platforms to educate our community. So this is, and we also did, I believe, a video recently, but just with catalytic converters, the recommendations, and we're going to put this in the newsletter again, the next council newsletter, so it is deployed. But just stay vigilant, park your car in a well-lit area. If it's not well-lit, then you want to buy the lights that illuminate the area. I find that if you reverse into your driveway, it's a lot, you expose more of the front of your vehicle where people are going to be under. So that's what I do at my house, and knock on wood, it's worked so far. And then just obviously reporting suspicious crimes immediately to us, and we'll get into the reporting in a second, but protecting your valuables. So as I spoke before with the residential burglaries, the vast majority was unlocked structures. And so we've got to work together, and we've got to lock up our stuff, because unfortunately there are people that are looking for crimes of opportunity, and they're walking around our neighborhoods and they are checking doors and checking side gates. So if we remain vigilant as a community, then we can reduce this together. And we'll also put this on the council newsletter. So how do I report a crime? If the crime is in progress, call 911. Or if you're like, if I need a deputy right here, right now, you just call 911. But if you're not sure, I don't know. If you're not sure, call 911. And if it's not a non-emergency, if you call that 650-802-4321, that is a direct line to dispatch. If you call the 363-4911, that gives you to a phone tree of all of our bureaus, but the 4321 is a direct line to our dispatcher. And also, we have anonymous tip lines for other variety of cases if people have seen something or they want to be anonymous, and also just reporting crimes that have no suspect information online. You can do that online on that website. And that is all I have for this. I will take questions now.
Thank you, Chief Bell. I very much appreciate it. Any questions for Chief Bell on this item? Councilmember Collins, and then we'll go to Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report, Chief Bell. It was excellent and very thorough. I just had one question on that commercial burglary where the owner saw the suspect on the cameras that he had installed, and you said that suspect was subsequently arrested. Was that suspect taken to jail, or was his crime of a nature where he was cited and released?
So since it was after March 1st, he did go to jail. But if it was say like we got him prior to March 1st, he would have been cited out.
Okay, and did he pay a $250 bail then?
I don't know. Once we drop him off,
you don't know.
So he would have had a $250 bail, but I don't know.
Maybe the question is, thank you. That was really the more appropriate question I should have asked. Was he subject to the $250 bail? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chief Bell, thanks for the presentation and the information. I guess I'd want to understand a little bit, it looked like from the map, which is, I appreciate the visual on that. That's helpful for me too, as I kind of look at that. It looks like, given sort of the proximity to the freeway on the east side, there was a sort of more significant number of vehicle thefts and other things. Are there specific things you're doing around that area, or do we feel like we have enough resources in terms of the license plate readers and other things? Or is there more we should be doing in that area of our community?
So as of right now, the Sheriff's Office is looking at purchasing something called a flock camera, which our Vehicle Theft Task Force does have, and we have utilized those resources within our city. Other cities up and down the peninsula have those resources. So that is helpful. As of right now, I believe that we do have enough resources with what we have, because all in all, the crime compared to other cities, we're not looking so bad.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Councilmember Dugan, and then we'll go to Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief Bell. Great report. I too like maps. You learn a lot looking at those dots. So thank you for that, and also thank you for the practical tips and advice through that, and the emphasis on everyone communicating with the police. I just want to emphasize that. Great point, and I appreciate how well you highlight that. And I feel sorry for any criminal who tries to steal your catalytic converter, that's for sure. My question is, and what a frustrating time with that catch and release and having, suspects literally taunting your officers. That's just upsetting at best. So I'm glad we're getting to the other side of that, and all of you should be commended for your patience around such an unusual time. And that's really my question. Do we have visibility of when the bail system is going to return to normal and we're going to get back to the way things used to be in the justice system?
So the order expires July 31st, 2021. So unless the Judicial Council of the State of California implements another order, which I haven't heard yet, but if we do hear, we'll get the memo, and I will communicate with council if that does occur. But it is due to sunset on the 31st.
Terrific. I'm glad that's coming up, and that must be a relief for you and your team.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Bell, thank you so much for the great presentation. I really appreciate all the time you spent in putting data together for us and the maps. I really appreciated your Sheriff's Office response slide. I think it shows just how valuable it is for San Carlos to have the Sheriff's Office here, because you really do just have so many resources. You mentioned the Vehicle Theft Task Force, there's the Crime Suppression Unit, the Detective Bureau, the Criminal Analysts. I mean, we have so many wonderful resources at our disposal. So I think that's really important to share with the community. My question for you is regarding shoplifting. And this is something that a lot of communities are dealing with right now. I've received some emails about it. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on shoplifting, and have we been doing some outreach to the businesses to encourage them to report it versus or taking some action versus just kind of letting people walk out the door?
Yes, so thank you for that question, because we have a lot of merchants in town. So it's really up to the business owner to report the crime, because it is a misdemeanor not committed in our presence. So someone has to say, I saw that person take it, and that person has to then sign a citizen's arrest form, be willing to testify in court to prosecute. So I can say that CVS has an asset protection officer that does communicate with us very well. They call us right away, and we prosecute and we book, or we'll cite and release depending on the circumstances for CVS. Others, like Home Depot is great. And I know that there's been a lot of stuff in the media regarding Walgreens, but just with respect to Walgreens, they do have a company policy where they do not contact law enforcement. So that's really on the business. That's their choice. We've tried, but that's kind of where we are right now. So it just depends on the business that we're dealing with.
Thank you. That's really helpful information to know. So it sounds like your office is very much in contact with our businesses here in town and open lines of communication. Do you see the city playing a role at all, or is this purely what sounds to me like a business decision and working with the sheriff's office?
It's a business decision. And so I think obviously the smaller mom and pop shops, we utilizing our downtown services unit, just educate how for people to report a crime, if someone's just walking into a nail salon and stealing something, just so we get the word out there to all of our merchants, not just the high-end retailer, like the bigger corporations. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Bell. Right, thank you. Thank you, Chief Bell, for that report. Very, very helpful. I think it seems like it definitely seems like the crime was up during the COVID period. Are you anticipating, that it's going to stay at that state for a period of time, or do you expect, can you give us some sort of a forecast as to what to expect as we move forward?
Well, if I could predict things, I'd be a millionaire. But in looking at trends, over the years, we have ebbs and flows, right? So if we have a large crew taking out catalytic converters and then we catch them, then we'll see that decrease, right? So it's just a matter of us communicating with our partners, communicating with the Detective Bureau, and then our men and women on the streets, taking their cases from start to finish. And, what's great about this Bureau is that people take that extra step and they want to take their case from start to finish, and they want to find that bad guy. They're not just sending it to the Detective Bureau for them to figure out. So it's a great team effort here. So I do when things are high, they must go low. So eventually they will go down there, but I can assure you that we are working very hard to get as low as we can. We know it's not going to be zero, but we'll try to get it as close to zero as we can.
Great, thank you. And I also appreciate the tips and best practices that the community can engage in, especially your invitation to have people call right away when they see that something is amiss, and you're stressing to, kind of step out of the way and let your team come in and do the job so that, people can stay safe and not put themselves into harm's way. So I appreciate, and I look forward to the upcoming communications to the community that you're working on.
Thank you.
All right, Crystal, are there any members of the public that wish to make comment on this item?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Chief Bell, very much appreciated. Thanks to you and your team.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so, the next item is Greg Rubens will do a presentation on the study session for private security guards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the meeting last month, the council asked for a study session item to generally report on some of the options the council might have in pursuing an ordinance to require or encourage security guards for businesses that might cause excessive or out of the ordinary police response. And so in my review, I looked at some of our local cities, and what I found was that cities with larger entertainment venues are much more likely to have an ordinance that requires security guards. And it manifests itself either as a health and safety ordinance where security guard is required for a certain type of business with objective standards. We have that actually in one of our codes in San Carlos for adult businesses, but other cities have expanded that to other types of businesses, that the larger entertainment venues, theaters, shopping malls, things of that nature, that where the community does not have the resources to have a police presence at all times at those types of facilities. The other types of ordinances I saw were, and it's in the staff report, the brief summary of San Mateo's ordinance. San Mateo is a larger city than us, and they do have some larger entertainment venues and some shopping centers. So I think that was probably the genesis of their ordinance. They also have, for type of business and size of business. So that's how they've approached it. You have to get a permit if you're an entertainment facility there, and it has due process and other requirements that if a permit's going to be applied for, persons are entitled to a hearing on the propriety of the permit, or if it's to be revoked, there's a process for revocation of the permit for a problematic business. We have in San Carlos, we also have an ordinance. I allude to it in the staff report, but we have an unruly gathering ordinance in town that might operate as a good model for some of the types of situations we may experience. Proactively, we don't have we've had some problems, but we haven't had major problems. But you know, the downtown is evolving, and it's a very popular destination. So one of the ideas I think was that if you were going to do an ordinance, we'd want to look at what types of situations might we see downtown, and then we'd work with the sheriff's office to determine what type of situations and how we could help with security threats or nuisances in our downtown area. The ordinance in San Mateo, I forgot to mention this, has different layers of security. So there's, for the larger businesses, they need to have a certified security guard. But for smaller businesses, they need to have a security presence, not a licensed security guard. So the old-fashioned term maybe is a bouncer or a door person that kind of monitors the door. During the peak periods, like between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. And closing time is, from my research, that was kind of an important time for these types of businesses where problems might occur. So if we did modify or come up with another layer for unruly gatherings directed at businesses, that might be one direction we could pursue.
Great.
And so the options you have are just to give us direction tonight. There's no ordinance on for consideration tonight, but what we're seeking is direction whether or not you want us to draft something to bring back to you or not.
Thank you. All right, so I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'll kick us off here. So my perspective, I'm seeing what you're seeing, Greg, is that the kind of the nature of our businesses are changing somewhat in the downtown area. And as San Carlos evolves, right, we also have a lot more development that's coming. And while we're not at the same scale as a San Mateo, I think there's, I would like us to consider, what is the right, the appropriate resource and solution for the challenges that, we anticipate seeing in our community. And so, with that, I would be open to, continuing to explore, I think what you called it, the unruly gathering ordinance maybe is the place to kind of lift off and clarify, what our intentions are with that. Because again, one of our values as a council is safety of our community. So that would
Let me know that it should be up in 5 minutes. He's rebooting it at the moment.
Okay, so do we need to take a pause then until we're reconnected?
Legally, we do not have to take a pause because of
Okay.
the malfunction of the video, but it's up to the council if you would like to just take a break and give us time to fix the signal.
Okay. Comments from council on that proposal? Do you want to wait or continue?
Through the chair, I just heard that we are back up and running now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Councilmember Dugan, and then we'll go to Councilmember Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I certainly appreciate your concern about this issue. I guess I'm also in the camp of just wanting to understand the problem that we're solving. You know, when there are problems in town, I'm always proud of how San Carlos responds and gets on top and solves problems. And I'm just in the camp of making sure when we spend our valuable resources and time, we're solving a problem that's pressing in some manner. And I guess I just haven't seen any reports, you know, of where this would be needed. I have a little bit of a hard time picturing kind of doormen and bouncers in downtown San Carlos, but if that's really something we need, I'm more than willing to look at it. But I guess I would like some understanding of the problem, and from Chief Bell or whomever is detecting something that we need to work on here.
So I can say, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. As of right now, there isn't an overwhelming nuisance downtown of where we're getting called multiple times to businesses. So there is not that need in my perception that we should move forward. But I like the 6-month idea of like, okay, things are opening up, let's reassess. And what does that look like to measure? I'll have to circle back with my team and just figure out exactly how we can measure that, and where are we going to put the parameters, or like how we're going to gather that data.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Councilmember Collins, I saw your hand up, but I wasn't sure if it was related to this or.
No, that was actually responding to the what to do with the connection being down. But
Okay.
But now that I've got the floor for a few seconds, I'll just say that I think a wait and see approach is probably appropriate at this point.
All right, Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you. I'll quickly chime in that I support that approach too, to give it 6 months and give Chief Bell an opportunity to collect data in a standardized fashion. So thank you, Councilmember Rack, for suggesting that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think this is really more about being proactive and setting expectations that we want our community to be safe. And in conversations with Greg, we talked about the idea of having something on the books that sets those expectations. And I don't necessarily know that it needs to be a uniformed police officer or security guard, right? There could be multiple solutions to this, as he described. But I think that kind of the intention is to not wait until we have a problem, and not also sink taxpayer money into policing services where we could have gotten ahead of something. So I hear council's perspective on this, and it sounds like there's a wish to wait and see, but I would ask that Chief Bell come back in a few months' time to let us know how things are going. There is an approach that we could potentially take that, Greg, I don't know if you want to talk about that at all or not. I think you alluded to it earlier in your presentation, but maybe if you could share that with the group, that would be helpful.
Well, I think that one of the things that we talked about earlier was how to create an ordinance that incentivizes businesses that are experiencing calls or situations to hire a security guard. So instead of if you have like I talked about earlier, having a police response charge if the police have to come back, more than a set period of time that the ordinance would determine, would be an incentive to have a security guard, perhaps. And if there was a police response, in consideration for having a security guard, you might have a reduced or no charge for a response, or only for something that's defined in the ordinance that's severe enough that it could have been avoided with appropriate mitigation by the property owner. That's just a concept we talked about. I mean, obviously it has to be put into an ordinance form that's enforceable and it has objective standards, but that was one of the concepts that I think could be workable.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, so I just request that council stay open to this idea. Again, I'm thinking about making sure that we're applying resources and appropriately into the right places. So, Crystal, are there any comments on this item?
Yes, we do have one hand raised. Kit, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Hi, this is Kit with Trenton Church.
Yes, hi, Kit.
Okay, you can hear me good. I just wanted to voice my opinion on this. I think, first of all, our downtown area, I'm here every night late and I don't see any trouble, first of all. So I'm wondering, like John, what the issues are that would bring up this needing security or private security. And then the other thing, I actually sent an email to the City Council today, and I showed them what I have done at my place of business in order to try and alleviate any pressure and troublemaking in our area. And I would like to see it maybe get all the businesses that might have issues at times from time to time get the option to do that as well. That's about all I have to say at this point. I know it's just something up for discussion. But again, I'd like to thank the City Council for, looking out for the people here in San Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you, Kit, and thank you for sharing your best practices with respect to your business. That's much appreciated. All right, so we'll go on to the public hearing, consideration of adopting an urgency ordinance, extending urgency ordinance 1571, imposing interim regulations for protected trees, chapter 1818 landscaping, and temporarily replacing section 1818-070 trees of title 18 for a period of 10 months and 15 days from duly noticed public hearing meeting. And presenting this is Andrea Martisich, Principal Planner. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Andrea Martisich, Principal Planner. The next item before you this evening is a request for an extension to the interim urgency ordinance regarding protected trees. This was originally adopted by the Council on June 14th of this year. If adopted this evening, the urgency ordinance would be extended for a period of 10 months and 15 days. For this presentation, I will provide a brief background of the item, as well as an update of tasks that are currently underway. Staff will then be available for questions from Council prior to public comment. On May 10th of this year, the City Council held a study session on protected trees, which included reviewing penalty fees and replanting policies from neighboring jurisdictions. At that time, there was general consensus from the City Council to move forward with a comprehensive update of the existing protected tree ordinance. Council also expressed interest in moving forward with an urgency ordinance to restrict protected tree removals and pruning while staff worked on this permanent ordinance. On June 14th, the interim urgency ordinance was adopted for a period of 45 days with the ability to extend it for a longer period of time. It's very common for cities to request an extension past the 45 days in order to address whatever issue the urgency ordinance is trying to solve. This is the request before you this evening. And again, it is to adopt an extension of the urgency ordinance for a period of 10 months and 15 days. Oops. There we go. The extension of the urgency ordinance will allow the more restrictive interim ordinance, which is currently in effect, to continue for a maximum period of 10 months and 15 days. This will allow the city time to research and prepare a more comprehensive permanent ordinance for your consideration in the future. Without this extension, the urgency ordinance would expire and the city would not be able to stop or slow down tree removals for the reasons that are currently allowed under this temporary ordinance. As a reminder, the urgency ordinance recognizes that there's an immediate threat of excessive tree removal to the unique character of the city's neighborhoods. It also provides specific guidance for assessing the level of risk or health for the trees. In addition, staff wants to ensure that there's enough time for both public input and education, as well as time to thoroughly research the direction received at the last council hearing. This will ensure that the proposed permanent ordinance encompasses the best practices that the council would like included, as well as allow time for staff to research and present accompanying implementation strategies. One item that I would like to clarify before moving on is in regard to penalty fees. This was a question that came up and I wanted to add some additional information to it. The urgency ordinance as adopted notes that any illegal removal will result in a fine not to exceed $5,000 or the appraised value of the tree, whichever is greater. And the language is a bit confusing because it's referencing both the not to exceed amount while also referencing whichever amount is greater. And the not to exceed language implies that the penalty fee could actually be less than $5,000. However, that was not the intention. So just to summarize the current urgency ordinance, if a tree is removed without permits, the appraised value of the tree would determine the resulting penalty. So if a tree was appraised at less than or equal to $5,000, the penalty would also be $5,000. However, if the tree was appraised at greater than $5,000, the penalty would be the appraised value of the tree. And we will work to clean up this language to make it more clear as part of the permanent ordinance when we bring it back to you. Since adoption of the urgency ordinance, staff has been working on several tasks. The first of that is the creation of a website for tree removal, which would also include frequently asked questions. Pending the outcome of tonight's hearing, we will finalize the citywide postcard, which is anticipated to be sent out within 2 weeks. And this postcard will outline a few of the major changes of the urgency ordinance, as well as guide people to the city's webpage and solicit feedback for the upcoming permanent ordinance. We are also planning a spotlight newsletter later this summer or for early fall, as well as posting a weekly list of approved tree removals for the public to view. Additionally, staff is also working on a public outreach plan, which will include the Planning Commission meetings and meetings with the public. We are conducting best practices research for cities within the county. We are looking at streamlining our city processes, including updating the application forms and notice templates to comply with the new requirements for noticing. We're continuing to work on scoping and budgeting of the project with the city arborist. And finally, we're also working on preparation of an administrative guidance document for detailed information for the public, as well as to help with decision making. In terms of next steps, this will look familiar from the last meeting. If adopted, we'll continue to work on the protected tree ordinance per your direction. In addition to public outreach, we would bring the draft ordinance to the Planning Commission for a study session, as well as recommendation to City Council. The budget we're anticipating would be utilized from our existing professional services budget. The original timeline for this project was approximately 4 months, and we are now about 1 month into that. So we are anticipating returning to Council with a permanent ordinance for consideration in late October. Staff is recommending that City Council extend the interim urgency ordinance for protected trees. And as I mentioned, we are anticipating coming back in October, which is of course earlier than the 10-month, 15-day maximum limit. However, we are requesting the maximum allowable extension time to accommodate any unforeseen challenges that may arise. And with that, I'm available for any questions. We also have Rucha Dande, our associate planner, available, and Stephanie Nisich, who is our city obtained arborist, to answer any technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for the update and the recommendation. Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Andrea, thanks for the presentation. The only question I had was on the fine and the penalty. I know you mentioned that and we emailed on that earlier today, and I appreciate you sort of clarifying that. I know you're going to tend to sort of update and fix it in the permanent ordinance. Do you feel like the current urgency ordinance is clear enough to do what we want to do with that, to have that $5,000 minimum, essentially the way it's written, or do we need to do something in the short term to change that?
I think for the time being, it is clear enough because it has the clause of whichever is greater. I don't think it's necessarily, it could be written better, definitely, but the whichever is greater clause does allow us to charge more if the tree is valued at more. And if you direct us that it's just basically a policy that it's a minimum of 5,000, then we could use that too until the ordinance is updated.
Just to add to that, I'm satisfied with the language, especially since Andrea pointed out that the staff's interpretation is the way that clears up the ambiguity. So it's on the record that's what staff's interpretation of that language is, and then we'll just work on making it clear in the permanent ordinance.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Dugan and then Councilmember Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Andrea. Appreciate the work on this. Quick question. My concern the first time around was just the appraised value of a tree is just such an unknown. I did want to get a sense of what the magnitude or range of possible amounts that could be. And I'm wondering if there's a better understanding now of kind of the range of what an average tree in San Carlos would be appraised at, or have there been any recent examples so we can just get a sense of what kind of fee we're affixing to this thing?
I apologize for not bringing that up. We have not started that yet, but what we are planning on doing is asking our arborist to appraise several trees around town as a case study and bring those back to you to show what the varying amounts are. So that is something we plan on bringing back. We have not had an illegal removal since the last hearing, so no new ones have been appraised. But we will also include that information if any do occur prior to coming back.
Okay, I appreciate that. And if someone did illegally remove a tree and it got appraised at $200,000, would they have the right under this ordinance to appeal that to the council?
Yes, they would. They would. There's a general right of appeal of an administrative decision like that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Andrea, for your report. I'm reasonably satisfied that this ordinance is headed in the right direction. I just wonder is it appropriate now, or should I reach out to you separately in terms of suggestions for non-protected trees that ought to be added to our list?
I think either way is fine. I'm happy to discuss offline if you prefer. But as you're aware, we're trying to do a pretty comprehensive ordinance, so we're definitely welcoming any ideas you might have.
Why don't I email you separately?
Great.
It's not a long list, so.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions from council, so we'll move to public comment. Crystal, are there any members of the public who wish to comment?
Yes, we do have one hand at the moment. Ken Castle, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I certainly support this extension. I only wish that this temporary measure had occurred 6 weeks ago and there would still be a 60-foot high redwood tree standing in my neighbor's yard, providing shade for our patio. There isn't a day that I look out the back that I don't feel a gut-wrenching scenario in missing that tree. And really, it should never have happened in the first place. I think what the city should really consider are some other measures here. Number one, in connection with whatever new measure is adopted, who would people call if they see an active cutter? If there's an active cutter that seems not to be a legitimate tree removal company, who do they call? What kind of response does the city have? There are other cities that will deploy an arborist, or in some cases, the police department, to stop the illegal removal of a tree. So rather than just hover in the office, in city office, and ask for neighbors to take pictures and submit emails, what's going to happen? How does that get resolved? The second thing is, how do you look at the situation of unlicensed tree cutters that are out there all the time that do not have the proper contractor's licensing for removing trees? I think also the bigger picture of these SB 9 and 10, where we could see all sorts of new ADUs and development in our neighborhoods, would have a huge impact on trees, as many city councils throughout the Bay Area have been discussing. So we really need to have something in place. We don't need that additional type of development. We really need more canopies and not densities. And it's really time to look at environment and supporting and protecting our existing neighborhoods and not allowing this kind of removal to happen. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ken. Crystal, are there any other members of the community who wish to make comment?
No, there are no further hands.
Okay. All right. All right. At this point, I would entertain a motion to close public comment period.
Can I ask one question, if I can, just to follow up on, I'm just curious if I don't know that we talked about that sort of active cutting issue that Mr. Castle mentions. I'd be curious to understand kind of what that might be. And I'd be curious to understand kind of what, do we have a process where if you're with licensing for tree cutting, do we do something like that in the city? How do we control for that issue?
So Jeff, could we just, or Greg, can we just clarify procedurally where we are in the conversation? Because we go from public comment to closing the public comment to council discussion. So.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Rapp, would you like your questions answered before the public hearing's closed, or would you rather have it after the public hearing?
I'm fine either way. I just didn't. I didn't realize we were not doing questions anymore. I'm happy to whatever is the proper protocol.
This is probably a question, so I could do it now. On the code enforcement side, if there's somebody cutting down a tree illegally, I think in San Carlos, if it's during business hours, a call to the building department is probably the way to go, because they could put a stop the work from being any further work being done, depending on when it is, when they catch them doing an illegal cut like that. If it's after hours, it's probably a police response. And then if somebody does do that, I just want to remind the public that the remedies in this ordinance aren't the only remedies that the city has against someone who does an illegal cut, because that's a misdemeanor violation of the municipal code, and that's $1,000 fine and potentially 6 months in jail if there's somebody intentionally cutting down a tree in violation of our ordinance. So there's other remedies we have. I think that's so it's not just an administrative remedy. There's also criminal remedies available. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to close public hearing on this matter.
Second. All right. Dugan made the motion. Colin seconded. Crystal, if you could call the roll, please.
Okay. Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer-Lohan?
Yes. All right. Any further council discussion or comment? Okay. We'll entertain a motion for the ordinance.
Madam Mayor, just for the record, since this is an urgency ordinance, it requires 4/5 vote of the council to to be extended.
Thank you, Greg. I saw that in the packet. Thank you for the reminder.
I'll move. I move to adopt ordinance number
1572.
1572, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos, pursuant to Government Code Section 65858B, extending urgency ordinance 1571, imposing interim regulations for protected trees, Chapter 18.18 landscaping, and temporarily replacing Section 18.18.070 trees of Title 18 for a period of 10 months and 15 days from the duly noticed public hearing meeting.
All right. Is there a second? All right, so we have Rack with the motion and Collins with the second. Crystal, can you call any further comment for those wishing to comment on this? All right, seeing none. Crystal, if you could call the roll.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so this next item, item 11B, new business, we'll be discussing consideration of adopting a resolution amending the Parklet outdoor dining program to require that parklets on the 600 block of Laurel Street remain within the boundaries of each business's respective storefront, and that businesses on the 600 block on Laurel must remain open at least 5 days a week in order to operate a parklet. I also understand that we will, this will include moving the farmers market from its current industrial arts location to the Laurel Street location. That wasn't called out. I just wanted to make sure everybody's clear on that. And Adam Aronson, Economic Development and Housing Manager, will be making a presentation. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll be giving the presentation tonight on amending the Parklet outdoor dining program on the 600 block of Laurel Street. So just to provide a quick background to remind everyone, the temporary closure was based on the state's declaration of emergency and findings that was necessary for the safety and protection of persons who use that portion of the street during the closure. On June 14th, the City Council approved resolution number 2021-049, which extended the closure and parklet program to September 1st, 2022. And before we move on, I just want to further clarify with the graphic here that this is just regarding the 600 block of Laurel Street that we are discussing tonight. So there are concerns that have been raised on the 600 block. A number of businesses, primarily in the retail sector, are experiencing a decrease in revenues due to the reduction of storefront parking. There are also concerns regarding underutilized parklets on the block. So these are businesses that are closed while their parklets are continuing to take up parking spaces. And then as well as this, there is the anticipated relocation of the San Carlos Farmers Market to the 600 block of Laurel Street. Now, as the council will remember, the city has recently taken over ownership of the farmers market, but it was previously under the control of the Chamber of Commerce. And most recently, it's been located on the east side. But the Chamber has reported that the farmers market is seeing declining revenue and booth operators in that area. So the hope is that relocating it to the downtown will help to revive the farmers market and bring back attendees and booths as well. And the 600 block is thought of as the best location for that, as it will have the most space both on the street and in parking spaces, and it could use the Wheeler Plaza surface parking lot as well for booths. So on July 6th, the council's downtown subcommittee met and recommended that the below changes be implemented on the 600 block by August 8th, 2021. First, any business with a parklet on the 600 block of Laurel Street should be required to restrict the size of their parklet to the length of their storefront. Second, only businesses that are open for a minimum of 5 days a week can have a parklet or continue their current parklet operations. So under this proposal, if a business is only open 4 days a week, they would not be allowed to have a parklet. And the reasons for these changes would be to prevent parklets from extending in front of neighboring businesses, to decrease the number of underutilized parklets, and to increase the number of storefront parking spaces on the 600 block. So with that, the alternatives available to the council include, first, to direct staff to restrict parklet sizes on the 600 block of Laurel Street to each business's respective storefront and require that businesses remain open at least 5 days a week to have a parklet by August 8th, 2021. And then 2, keep the parklet program as is on the 600 block or provide staff with alternative direction. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions from council? Councilmember Dugan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate the work the subcommittee and staff have done on this important matter. Quick questions. So, be great to, the farmers market, very important. I think the 600 block of Laurel likely will breathe new life back into our farmers market. Fully supportive of that. But is it really the case we have to just pick one location for the farmers market? It seems to me having it back on Laurel Street for, maybe the majority of the time, but occasionally putting it back in the Arts District, or maybe trying out South Laurel, using it as kind of the economic driver that it can be to shines, highlight other areas of town as we have attempted to do. Is there any do we really have to just pick one location for the farmers market, or can it be more flexible?
I can speak with regards to the east side specifically. The chamber reported their data on how the market was doing over there. And just for comparison's sake, in 2019, when the market was downtown, it was seeing about $40,000 in income each year and had about 56 vendors. And now it's down to losing about $10,000 a year and only 16 vendors. So the chamber doesn't believe that, at least on the east side, the market will be able to continue in that location. They're seeing more and more vendors drop off with each market. With South Laurel, I'm not so certain. It's not something we've tried out yet. And I would have to, maybe bring that to Stephen Mechie, the Public Works Director, to see if physically it's possible to move it back and forth between locations.
I see, but programmatically, are there issues with it being in a different location for 1 week versus the normal location?
Sure, I can speak up to that. Amy Newby, Parks and Recreation Director. First and foremost, I would like to see the priority be the success of the farmers market. And what we've seen is that moving the market has affected the success of the farmers market in general, the attendance, the vendor participation. Not only is revenue significantly down and not supporting the program itself.
No, I understand it's not worked the best in the arts and, on the east side, but, if we have it at Laurel for 8 weeks in a row, is there a programmatic issue why we couldn't put it back there for 1 week and then bring it back to Laurel? Just as a way of kind of shining a spotlight on different parts of town. It's not maybe business will be down a little bit that week, but, is there something about the way our farmers market operates that we couldn't put it somewhere else for 1 week occasionally?
We could. It would be just coordinating logistics with everyone. So that includes all of the vendors, it includes attendees, it includes our public works support staff, our on-site staff as well. So I think it would take a lot of coordination to jump around from location to location, even on a 8-week or 10-week basis, or even just to do it for 1 week. And I'm actually not sure if it would be worth it because it's really hard to get the community and get people on board for where it is, what time it is. And if we were to move it one day and they show up at the location it has been, I think there just could be that miscommunication, misinformation, that people then would be frustrated.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And I did want to make a point that we have surveyed our local communities who've continued to operate their farmers market, either through the pandemic or resumed, similar to when San Carlos resumed the market, in the same location, the same time, and they're not seeing the drop off that we've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just add one quick comment, and that would be that the vendors would definitely prefer to have a fixed time and location so that the market could be consistently marketed to the public for their ability to attend and purchase goods from their businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Adam, for the presentation. I was going to ask about the farmers market too, but that's been covered, so thank you. My first question then is, how were business owners on the 600 block? Were they notified at all that we were having this discussion this evening?
Yeah, they have been reached out to. The chamber in particular has been reaching out to individual businesses to let them know about these changes and the relocation of the farmers market as well.
Okay. All right. So I met with, I assume all of us have been meeting with our local downtown business owners lately. I met with several just a few days ago, and they suggested kind of one amendment to the language that I'm wondering if you considered at all. They suggested that restaurants have to be open 5 days a week for both lunch and dinner. And I think they were kind of drawing the parallel of, you know, if you're using a parklet during the daytime, that you should be serving food. Did staff consider that at all as an option to include?
We only discussed days of operation. We didn't get to hours of operation, but if it's something the council wanted us to include, we certainly could do that.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I guess during the discussion, I'd be interested in hearing my colleagues' thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions from council on this. Crystal, are there any members of the public who wish to make comment?
We have closed the public comment. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Nope, I'm on the wrong item. Yes, we do have 2 hands up. David Tusman, you should be able to unmute.
Hello.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, my name is David Tusman. I'm a resident of San Carlos. I live near downtown. I love the open streets and parklet programs. And I'm a bit confused by the suggestion to limit extending the parklets beyond their own business for the sake of increasing parking spaces, because I thought the streets were closed. So how are cars supposed to get to those parking spaces? It doesn't seem useful. And I'm arguing that the cars shouldn't be able to get there because it's great that people can walk. So that's kind of confusing. I wonder if that could be clarified. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Just real quick, we're talking about the 600 block, which is currently open to traffic, not the 700 block, which is not open to traffic. All right. Additional members, Crystal?
Yes. The next speaker, I'm going to have to apologize. That's a little, oh, he just dropped his head. Will Stoll, you're up next. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. I completely understand and agree with many of Barry's concerns. I know he's one of the louder voices around this matter. Dynasty Cleaners. I've spoken to him myself about this. But a dry cleaner losing revenue has very little right now to do with the loss of parking in any area. It really has a lot to do with dry cleaners losing revenue with people no longer being required to dress up and go to work. Like we have to take these other things into account. The pandemic has drastically changed many businesses, and we really need to, as businesses and a business owner myself, adapt to the way the world is changing. I really like the idea of the farmers market coming back to Earl Street, and with Sunday being the day it's closed right now, it sounds like a really great idea to bring it back anyway. So the 600 block sounds like a great place to put that. And somebody already mentioned this, and I'm really glad they did, but any kind of event, it really needs to always have the same location, day, and time. Otherwise, it would just fail. It doesn't matter what the type of event is, because people just get confused. But at the end of the day, the entire community needs to be considered for these types of decisions, and not just a couple loud voices. Reminds me of Twitter. So we need to avoid making decisions based on limited feedback. But I do believe that businesses that are taking up parklets that are not in front of their business, that does sound like a very unfair thing. So those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you. Next up, we have Balramatelagani. You should be able to unmute. There you go.
Good evening to everybody. First of all, I want to
thank you guys for taking time to speak with some of the business owners downtown. I'm sure that every one of you guys understood the situation that we are in. And thank you for taking all the comment that you heard from us and putting it in action. And the only thing I want to add to this is if you could be kind enough to consider the restaurants that are open 5 days be lunch and dinner. Again, there's a lot of parking spaces that are being wasted right now that we like to kind of use it for the businesses that are open. Thank you. And again, Wills, I appreciate your comment about the dry cleaner. The dry cleaner are doing much better than they did before, and we are going the right direction like most other businesses. Thanks, everybody, for your help.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Next up is Debbie Baldocci. You should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question to be sure I understand. I do go to that block a lot, and because I am older and not able to walk as much, I do need to park down there. So the businesses I regularly go to are not the restaurants. They're the other businesses like the bagel shop or the olive oil store. So will you still be able to drive down there to go to the other businesses that are not restaurants, or is it just going to be closed?
Thank you, Debbie. Again, we're talking about the 600 block, which is currently open to vehicle traffic. The 700 block, where it starts with Diddums and ends near some of the restaurants near past south of Bank of America, is closed to vehicular traffic. We're talking about the 600 block, which is currently open to vehicular traffic.
Thank you.
Okay, and there are no further hands from the public.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move into comment and discussion. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I actually had a residual question, which I guess will roll into my comments. So I'll just do it all at once. But my final question is, it's kind of a comment too to kick it off, is I was trying, and I know we're moving fast here and there's a lot of moving parts and this is a very complicated area. So I appreciate the subcommittee's efforts and staff and all of our cycling with the community. We got a lot to work on here. I was struck, of all the things that I think are on a list to be discussed and dealt with. This struck me as fairly modest, just a very small first step in tweaking our program to better suit more folks' needs. So I guess for example, I was surprised it just seems to me a parklet naturally should be limited to the width of the storefront. That just seems natural to me. I understood we kind of allowed spillover when the restaurants couldn't have indoor seating. That made sense, but that's no longer the case. I'm just wondering, is there any particular reason we didn't apply this restriction of the width of the storefronts to all parklets in town, 700 block and elsewhere? It just seems like a pretty obvious principle that could be applied generally, but maybe there's specific issues or matters that I'm not aware of.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. I think at this time, what I'd like to do is call on Councilmember Collins as a member of the subcommittee. I understand this came through subcommittee, so would love to hear your perspective on this proposal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think maybe some of what I say may provide some answers and give some context to what we're doing. So over the last several weeks, the owners of the 600 block businesses met separately with me and I believe all the other council members to express their concerns about traffic and mobility on their block. When we reopened the block after its brief initial closure last June, there were many parking spaces freed up. And that allowed them to continue providing service to their customers. And I'm speaking specifically of the non-restaurant businesses. Now, over the course of the last year, many of those parking spaces were gradually taken over by parklets as several businesses expanded their outdoor footprint. They also pointed out that some seniors have mobility issues and some people have disabilities, and it's not realistic to expect them to use either the Wheeler or Samtrans garages and then walk a great distance to the businesses on Laurel Street. Finally, they told us that they wouldn't mind having the Sunday Farmers Market on their block, and as you've seen in the proposal, as they feel it would actually help many of their businesses. And the block is already closed on Sundays anyway. So at our subcommittee meeting, we heard from the Chamber's Amy Buckmaster, and she pointed out that many more vendors would participate in the farmers market if it were to be returned to Laurel Street, as many have been struggling and at the temporary location on the east side. Now, since the restaurants are allowed to full capacity indoor dining now, it makes sense to us that having them limit their parking width to the actual store frontage will not substantially impact their businesses and will in fact restore many of the parking places in front of those stores that really need them for their day-to-day operations. Finally, I heard from a couple of restaurant owners on the 600 blocks who said that they were actually in full support of these proposed changes. Finally, as a footnote, I would add that I think these modifications, as John pointed out, are modest, and they may also serve as a guideline to us at some point in the future if we want to review the status of the 700 block. At this point, I think it might be a good idea to see if Adam wants to add his thoughts. Maybe tell me anything I missed.
Sure. Thank you, Ron. We covered a lot in that meeting. I do think I think you pretty much covered everything around, I think the initial focus and what we wanted to do was to work with the 600 block and not try to bite off more than we can chew. And I mean, there's certainly some things that we need to look at for the long term in terms of the safety of the parklets, some of the electrical and other things, since they are going to be potentially there for another year plus. So, doing those sort of longer term activities are part of the things I think we want to sort of tackle in the next round of activities. I think we just got an invite to a doodle poll to sort of have a next meeting of the subcommittee, sort of, as we continue to kind of work through looking at sort of short-term, long-term, and, sort of, I think we've talked about maybe, sort of what Laurel looks like permanently. And so we thought this would be a good thing to sort of tackle in the short-term as moderate, brought the farmers market back, and I think, restored some parking that was not for parklets that weren't being used.
And I might just add to that the subcommittee had asked us, the staff, to continue to work with them over the summer months with the goal of having some potential more midterm type changes, including some adjustments, as Adam just mentioned, how we might do inspections and whatnot for safety, health and safety on the existing structures and those kinds of things, as well as a number of other issues that we're working with the subcommittee on, ready for the council at one of their first 2 meetings back after recess. So we'll have a broader list of potential recommendations from the subcommittee for you at that time.
Okay, Bill, thank you. I know a lot of work has gone into this, so I certainly appreciate that. And ultimately, I think we will need to limit the width of all of our parklets. Maybe now is not the time. It's unfortunate. It's going to be well over a month before we revisit anything with the next 2 meetings, summer furlough here. But anyway, so my only other comment would be, I'm very supportive of this. I think the 5-day-a-week limit is appropriate as well, and I would support applying that for businesses. They need to be open at lunch and dinner. I would support that. I think those parklets do take up a lot of parking, and if they're not being used economically, we got to find a balance to this, which kind of, I'm looking forward to engaging in this midterm plan because there's just so much meaty stuff, and I think some other low-hanging fruit we should deal with as soon as we can. You know, at some point we're going to have to talk about, you know, are we charging rents for these parklets, et cetera. And with regard to the farmers market, fully supportive. I think it's great. You know, we have a wonderful farmers market. It's sad that people have had a hard time finding it on our east side. You know, I was there many times. I think it's a great location. I've enjoyed my time there, and there's so many great businesses there. So it's sad that it has to leave there to get revived. I do think it is a great fit on the 600 block. I think it'll bring even more vibrancy downtown. You know, and I get it. There, you know, marketing says leave it all in one spot. People can find it easily. So, you know, not an optimal business decision, but I like the idea of keeping a strong farmers market and then maybe considering lending that energy to different parts of our town, whether that be back on the east side, whether that be the southern stretch of Laurel, just to bring activity and share that love a bit around town. But I understand there's some practical constraints around that. But I just throw that out there. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a question. I don't know if it's sort of discussion point or question point, but I know the Vice Mayor brought up about lunch, and you know, Councilmember Dugan did the same. I guess what I don't know is if we were to make that change today, what businesses are affected by that? We're sort of giving them potentially a shorter notice. We're not. So I don't know who that affects, and so I think it's hard for me to make that decision without knowing that. Are we telling a couple places that, you know, they just have the orange barriers, or are we telling people they have to they may potentially have to take down stuff that they spent thousands of dollars on to construct parklets? And so I'd like to me, I'd rather, I'm not opposed to it. I like to understand kind of what the impact is before we were to make that decision. So if someone can, and if anyone knows if from staff can tell me what businesses that might be. I just don't know who's open at lunch versus just at dinner for restaurants.
Adam or Jeff, could you address this? There's not that many parklets down there from what I recall. So do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I believe there's only one, and it's number 5 Kitchen. And just reviewing, I believe whether you do the 5 days a week for lunch and dinner or just 5 days a week, that's the only business it would apply to. Assuming everyone's online hours are correct.
Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Adam, for that. I did walk downtown today to kind of check that out, and that was my what I found as well, is pretty much everyone was open at lunchtime today except for number 5 Kitchen. So it sounds like maybe that extra language might not be necessary. Maybe that's something that, and I agree about the noticing too, Adam. I think that's a concern. So maybe that's something that the subcommittee could, you know, add to their list over the summer to take a look at, or you know, monitor the situation. I also wanted to just make sure that we're keeping an eye. We're speaking of number 5 Kitchen, and that owner had written into us, and he has a very narrow storefront. So I would just like to make sure that we're sensitive to the fact that his frontage is different and unique than other stores or than other restaurants down there. So, you know, the sidewalk dining permit program is still open too. Is that correct, Adam, as an option?
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then with regard to the farmers market, you know, I think that it did really serve an important role during the pandemic to bring customers to a new area of town. I thought it was really important to spread our support of businesses far and wide in San Carlos. And I too am disappointed that it's not being successful in that area. I've shopped down there. I've really enjoyed it. I thought it had a really fun vibe, and it's disappointing that it has not been more successful. So, you know, it does sound like it needs a new location in order to be successful, but I as a discussion point, I would like to put it out there that I'd like to, continue to think and brainstorm with the chamber about new ways to support our industrial arts area. It is a very important part of town with, really awesome businesses. And, I know our art and wine fair was canceled. Maybe if the chamber was interested, or, we have Wendy Shatino now on our staff, maybe, we could do if the businesses approached us for a, wine and beer walk or something this fall, we could certainly look for ways that the city can help support, other events in that area of town. Working on supporting the horsepower car show. Maybe there's some kind of pop-up market that they would like down there. I think that, continuing to be creative and looking for ways to support all of our businesses, including in the industrial arts area, is really important. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Vice Mayor McDowell. So from my perspective, I'd like to weigh in on this. So I appreciate subcommittee bringing this to council tonight. I always look back at our mission and values, and we have very clearly stated we want to create a business-friendly community. So I appreciate the discussion here. The street closure in its current form, we've lost 150 parking spots. I appreciate one of the members of the public calling in, Debbie, to talk about her personal experience and with mobility. I've heard that from a number of our community members. And these retailers have been impacted not only on the 600 block, but I want to clarify also the 700 block. Some of them have lost revenues up to 70%. And they have families that they need to support, and they're valuable, and their businesses are viable, even in these online purchasing days. So I think what I'm hearing from them loud and clear is what they need is more parking during the daytime, because that's what their business requires. Their customers have told them this. They've told them that they can't get to their businesses. They circle the block too many times, and they drive on. So I'm in support of opening up parking spots on the 600 block that are directly in front of the establishments. And because they are dependent upon daytime population, I think those restaurants that offer, that are in business to serve lunch and dinner, it's reasonable that they have a parklet in front of their frontage, directly in front. But those that don't, I seriously question the fairness to the retailers in terms of getting that parking. So again, restaurants and retailers are back at 100% capacity, but the thing that's hurting the retailers right now is really that lack of daytime parking. So that would be kind of my perspective in terms of farmers market. My recollection again is it was moved to industrial arts because of the street closure, and we couldn't have events with the current configuration. I appreciate that it also needs to be revenue generating and operating a loss. If we can't attract vendors and we can't attract customers, there's really no market. So I appreciate the need to move it back to Laurel Street. And I'm also, intrigued by Councilmember Dugan's suggestion that at some point, perhaps like with all of our other programming, charging the restaurants for the encroachments. This is something fairly typical that's done. There's a fee for a parklet. Right now, there's really no incentive for anybody to take out another parklet since they're offered as a subsidy. So maybe that could be something subcommittee looks at over the long term. And possibly even, as we've done in the past, think about a subsidy or some sort of grant program to the retailers who've been suffering as a result of this program with those tax dollars. So those are my perspectives. I'll call in Councilmember Collins, and then we'll go to Councilmember Reck.
My only comment was that I like Sarah's idea about the beer and wine walk down in the industrial area. Other than that, I'll save any other comments I have until we're ready to vote.
All right, Councilmember Reck.
I was going to add the same thing. That was something I appreciate that suggestion, and I think there's some opportunities there to highlight some of the businesses there, but and also in other parts of town as well. I think working with the chamber and the Park and Rec would be a good opportunity to look at those potential events.
Okay, so are there? So there's no further discussion. So is at this point, I've not seen any hands up, so we'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to adopt resolution 2021-68. 68, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending the Parklet outdoor dining program to require that parklets on the 600 block of Laurel remain within the boundaries of each business's respective storefront, and that the businesses on the 600 block on Laurel Street must remain open for at least 5 days a week in order to operate a parklet.
Is there a second for that? And I noticed, Ron, you didn't mention lunch.
Second.
So are you
Sorry.
making them?
Yes, to include remaining open for lunch and dinner. Is that an accurate addition?
I know we said it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's.
I said it does.
Either way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it does matter because these businesses that are suffering in the retail, they need the daytime parking.
I think it's one parking space, Madam Mayor.
Understood. It's actually, I think it's more than that, Adam, with all due respect. So.
That's fine.
I would agree.
I'm fine. I'm fine either way. I just thought that Adam had said that the business was closed, wasn't open 5 days a week. So the one we were talking about what didn't matter for that particular business. But I'm happy to support whatever the council wants to do on that one.
I still support that lunch restriction as well. So sounds like we might have a consensus on that. Sarah, did you go back on that? I kind of.
No, I support it as well. I think that daytime parking is really important. So I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All right, Crystal, if you could call the roll.
Madam Mayor, I wanted to make just one comment. I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight. I think that this is really great work coming out of our subcommittee. I want to thank Adam and Ron for their work. I think this is a great example of compromise that we're going to be dealing with a lot in our future. And I wanted to thank all of the merchants and retailers and restaurants for reaching out to us over the last couple of weeks and almost couple of years now. I just want to appreciate everyone's efforts on this. So thank you.
Councilmember Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And Madam Mayor, I just want to extend my thanks to all the business owners who reached out to us on the council. I think it's always important for us to be responsive to everyone in the community, whether they operate a business or live here, as to what their concerns are. And then finally, I would also like to thank the work that staff did on this. They came up with some good suggestions. They worked with us, and they always give us some great options to think about. So there's a lot of people to be grateful to. This doesn't all come out of Adam's and my brains. So there's a lot of collaborative effort that goes into this process.
Thank you, Councilmember Collins. I appreciate that. I also want to just chime in here. Again, it's about working together. That is so important as a community. And I know for these business owners, it's not easy to participate in this process. It's kind of unwieldy, but I appreciate your courage and your willingness to do so and share your stories and ask for what you need. And for all those on this call to respond in kind. Councilmember Rack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to sort of reiterate I think it's a good example of compromise and everyone working together, both the business community and the council and staff and everyone. And look, we made changes at the last minute here in terms of the lunch option, which I think, I'm certainly supportive of. And I think that's, I think it's a good example of how we can work together to, I think, hopefully have a win-win for everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to echo everyone else's comments. In particular, really appreciate our local businesses, all of them reaching out, retailers, restaurants, everyone downtown. We're working our way through this. It's a measured process. We're taking it a step at a time. We have a lot more work to do. There's a lot more things that will make that midterm plan, I think we are calling it. And I look forward to that work. And I would just hope that, I would encourage the businesses to keep letting us know your thoughts and how we can help make these programs work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Parma-Lohan?
Yes. So at this time, I'd like to propose a 10-minute break and reconvene at 9:31. Anyone opposed?
Nope.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
AM 10.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item new business 11C, consideration of adopting resolution authorizing an amendment to the law enforcement services agreement with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office for the Downtown Services Unit Program for fiscal year 2021 to 2022, approving a full-time community service officer and increasing the appropriation by $82,000, funded by the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund. This presentation will be made by Captain Bell. You're on a roll tonight, Chief Bell. Welcome back for your encore.
Good to see you guys again. Thank you for having me. All right, so the purpose of this presentation is to provide a summary of activity for the Downtown Service Unit, often referred to as DSU. The DSU was created in October 2019 to work within the expanding downtown core in the city of San Carlos. The mission was to work with business owners, city officials, and the general public to promote a safe place to live, work, and learn. The DSU is dedicated to build partnerships with the various stakeholders in the downtown area with an emphasis on problem solving, safety, and a positive experience when downtown. During the pilot, the deputy always had access to a patrol vehicle, and that deputy was always on overtime. Alternate patrol techniques such as foot and motorcycle patrol were used to establish a highly visible, professional, interactive, and progressive police presence in the heart of San Carlos economic and entertainment core. We also deployed plainclothes operations during COVID for just social distancing and that to report back, like the observe and report, which we were asked to do by council. The operating budget. Originally, the pilot was authorized for $250,000 for the fiscal year 1920, and the initial schedule was to be Thursday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., using voluntary overtime staff signups, which means that if it went unfilled, we did not mandatory someone to fill that shift. This schedule was proposed to be flexible and could be updated based on the needs of the community. The DSU pilot was extended with additional funding authorized by council for fiscal year 2021. However, it was reduced to $150,000 due to COVID. Between the budget reduction and the COVID-19 pandemic impacting the overall footprint and daily profile of downtown, the DSU was deployed less frequently. Scheduled deployments were varied depending on factors such as weather and COVID-19 risk level tiers. So the higher the level, the less people were assumedly out. During the pandemic, the less consistent downtown visitors present, the deputy sheriffs chose to exercise budget constraints by absorbing DSU responsibilities and roles through patrol units. The cost savings exercised in the winter months and more restrictive COVID-19 risk level tiers allowed for operational flexibility and increased DSU presence as we started to open up and as we saw in the spring of 2021. So this is by calendar year, and this chart outlines our data, which reflects the DSU specific activity and does not include general patrol operations data. So for example, if a beat deputy decided to just go walk downtown for an hour and get to know people or just get their face out there. That was not specific to the DSU unit and funding and overtime. So staff hours just means overtime hours assigned to the DSU capacity. And what is a business check? The purpose of a business check is to connect with the downtown merchants, visitors, and city officials to identify any issues or problems that would affect the overall positive experience when downtown. And citations are primarily traffic enforcement citations and parking citations, such as the metered parking or minutes and the illegal U-turns into parking spaces, our favorite, loud music, speeding, etc. So our recommendation, in mid-May, we used a CSO, which is a community service officer, as an alternate and an innovative way to positively impact our community. We did this to experiment with a consistent, long-term, familiar face for the downtown. Although limited in duties, such as parking enforcement only, or investigating property crimes with no suspect information, and other patrol support functions, a CSO can build relationships, engage the community, just the same as a deputy sheriff. Some might be more receptive. We recognized the main quality of life issue we observed was traffic. We only have 2 motors that work Monday through Friday in the entire town. And we all know how traffic is all around town. Adding specific traffic funds for downtown can focus on a directed patrol function, using motors and off-road bikes. This will provide a larger pool of individuals within the sheriff's office that can work this overtime. With this increase, that will allow us for 60 10-hour shifts for a motor deputy. We could split that up for the traffic portion, and we could do 2 motors for 4 hours on a Saturday morning, as an example. So our staff recommendation is to staff DSU with a full-time community service officer. And the benefits is the consistent face. They'll have that liaison between the entire sheriff's office. And so if there is an issue, then that person would come back to us, report out, gather data or even resources, and redeploy. If there is an incident downtown while the CSO is down there, they have a radio that goes immediately to dispatch. So if he or she or that person needs to get help right away, that can be readily accessible. And using a CSO is just a little bit cheaper on a full-time basis. But we got some great feedback in his travels that 90% of the individuals that he spoke to were, they loved the idea of the familiar face, and just, they didn't, when you have someone on overtime, it's always somebody different, right? But for traffic purposes, if someone's on overtime, if I tell them, hey, we have a stop sign issue at Cherry and Laurel, then they can saturate that area and focus on that, and anyone can do that. But if you have inconsistencies in that person that are, sharing ideas, and it could be all over the place and not consistent for what we need in this city. So, additional DSU options. If we don't like the recommendation made by staff, we can maintain the current voluntary overtime model using previously authorized funds for fiscal year 21-22, which is $150,000. We can use the current overtime model with incorporating existing CSO, no change in budget, but this would impact operationally within our unit. So we would, use a CSO when they are available, which would be intermittent and not consistent. Option 3, consider an additional full-time deputy sheriff dedicating existing and using a dedicated existing CSO. That would require an additional funding of $172,000. Or option 4, we just discontinue DSU and continue engagement through general patrol operations. And that concludes my presentation, and I will take questions.
Thank you, Chief Bell. I appreciate that. Any questions for Chief Bell? Okay, well, I've got one. Chief Bell, could you talk a little bit about, you kind of touched on it, but could you help me better understand like what problem we're solving with the community services officer? What do we hope to accomplish here, and why is it important at this time?
So I think as we're opening up, and also in my presentation earlier, how we saw on the Laurel corridor of just the commercial burglaries that are occurring overnight. This is a great opportunity for a CSO to build the education with the merchants and explain, okay, this is how you can protect your business front, and this is what it looks like, and this is what helps us. And so that is something that a CSO can do. Also, questions with, if they have questions of the city, that CSO can go to the city and to the right person and make that connection. And it's, a lot of times, we'll see that, they see the badge and the shirt, not necessarily like the CSO wears the Smurf blue, as we call it, but they see the badge and they're going to ask a question. Whereas, they might not call us or they might not reach out, but just having that access to the city would benefit all of us, all departments.
And it would benefit you in what ways? I just want to drill down a little bit, and then I'll hand the floor to Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, so if a business may be too busy to report a crime, or like they're seeing extra bottles, like Councilmember Rack was talking about, just the trash, then that CSO can then report back to us and say, okay, these are the dates and times that this trash is showing up. Okay, so now we need to utilize our patrol units out on the field and deploy them in certain hours of the evening to address that issue. So they're the eyes and ears that people may not necessarily want to call. So just building that relationship with our community and just opening up the lines of communication within the city and us.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, thank you, Chief Bell. Good overview. Quick question. So you're recommending a CSO, and you said a full deputy would be $172,000. Would that be additional to what you're asking for tonight, or is the cost of a deputy $172,000?
The cost of a deputy for this next fiscal year is approximately $375,000 with salary, benefits, and overtime.
Okay, so the 172 would be on top of what you're asking for currently?
On top of the 150 that is already approved.
Got it. Okay, understood. And could you just, I certainly hear you on the benefits. Our downtown is such a critical part of our community, and it's just good to have a general presence and relationships being formed and be of service to our downtown merchants and just being generally available. I think it's great for community relations and our police, not to mention the direct services that can be delivered. So are you recommending a CSO solely on budgetary grounds, or are CSOs specifically trained in these kind of activities? Or, are we gaining something by going with a CFO versus a full deputy? Or, does a full deputy, would they actually deliver additional value if we did fund a full deputy for this?
If we funded a full deputy, I would like them to be out on the streets on a swing shift, patrolling your neighborhoods, because that's where we're seeing, the crimes. So the benefit of having a CSO is that it is fiscally responsible for us to use. We're getting the same service from that person. So, for example, if I have a deputy sheriff that is trying to build a relationship with a merchant or a member of the community, and they on view someone make an illegal U-turn right in front of them, is the expectation, hold on, stop, I'll be right back, hey, you come back, and all of a sudden I have a deputy sheriff yelling down the street for this person to stop their vehicle. So whereas if we separate the two and just have the focused enforcement for the overtime for traffic for downtown, and then we have that building relationship with the CSO, I think that is exactly what we need for this model.
Okay, terrific. So the CSO is actually particularly well suited for this role. So thank you for that.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor McDowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief Bell, for your presentation and for doing this research for us. I like the familiar face downtown aspect of this program, so I appreciate that. My questions are, the CSO cannot do moving, it cannot cite for moving violations, which you just explained to Councilmember Dugan, but they can do parking enforcement. Is that correct? If someone overstays the 10-minute spot, they could ticket?
Yes, they can ticket, they can tow vehicles, they can take some crime reports, depending on what it is. And then we could even further that individual's training to get them to do other things. Because some agencies have different levels of CSOs that are allowed to do certain things. So we could look into further training that individual and having a better asset for us downtown.
Right, okay. Because what I'm hearing from the downtown business owners is that the enforcement, they would like to see more enforcement, and we have increased our short-term parking spaces downtown to specifically be very useful for, you know, people doing quick drop-offs and pickups. And when people stay in there for 2 or 3 hours, it defeats the purpose. So I am looking for that. And then with regard to moving violations, as I stood there having a meeting last week, I saw 2 illegal U-turns in an hour. So I am interested in stepping up enforcement. If we don't, in order to get that enforcement downtown, is your presentation saying that we need to provide the additional funding of $82,000, or would some of it be covered in what we have currently budgeted?
So with the 150, if we subtract what a full-time CSO is, that leaves us with $18,000. So if we add 82,000 to that, then that gives us 100,000 for traffic overtime enforcement in downtown. Did that make sense?
Okay, so if we approve 82,000 tonight, then we're getting the CSO and the traffic overtime.
Yes.
Okay, that helps. That's very helpful. And then my last question is, are you envisioning the hours of the CSO to be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. or, you know, a lot of our businesses aren't open at 7 a.m. I'm wondering if we can push it later in the day and then have them stay through the evening hours when things do get busy.
Yes, so what we would do is we would kind of get an overall understanding of the business hours in downtown and figure out what is the best like scope or areas or times that we should deploy this resource. And, you know, obviously it would be flexible. So if there was an event going on, we would have that individual move around their schedule to accommodate an event. But for me, it would be either Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending on what's going on that particular time. And the hours would start probably like 9 or 10. You know, as I walk downtown, things aren't really picking up until like 9:30, 10.
Right. Okay. Or a little later. Okay. Thank you very much, Chief Bell.
Depending on the night before. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Rick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I don't have a question. I just, when we're ready for comments, or I had a suggestion, and so I just want to make that point whenever that happens.
All right. We'll get to that after public comment. Councilmember Dugan, it looks like you have another question.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just a quick follow-up for Chief Bell, and I appreciate Vice Mayor McDowell's concerns about traffic enforcement downtown. And my question is simply, does the traffic enforcement have to be overtime? Is that because you're looking to extend the hours of it? Or, you know, I guess I thought part of our relationship with the Sheriff's Department allowed more of a flexible labor force. So when we needed more resources, it didn't have to be this burdensome overtime. It could be more flexible and regular. Is there a reason that has to be overtime?
Yeah, so our motors that we have designated in town, they're both on a 4-10 Monday through Friday. One has a Monday off, the other has a Friday off, because that's where our concentrated traffic issues are. So within the town, like we're very skeleton crew when it comes to traffic, just to the footprint that we have from the east side to all the way to Crestview, all the traffic complaints that we get. So it would be relatively impossible to service all of those complaints in a timely fashion with the expectation from our community. So the overtime is to supplement those resources.
If it's so stretched, I mean, like what would we have to invest to have another fully dedicated resource in a way that we wouldn't be paying time and a half for how much ever worse the overtime is?
So if you're suggesting, are you suggesting to have an additional motor?
Maybe. I guess I just want to understand that.
So that would just be that would be your $372,000 for an additional motor, plus the cost of a new motor and the cost of the training to deploy the motor. So that's the cost, and we can actually get a lot accomplished if we, have 3 motors stay from like 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. downtown, and they're splitting the time. It's not a whole 10-hour shift, but we're saturating the areas and we're hitting the hot areas, and that way people know, oh, I better not do something because I know there's always a motor there, or every time I come down here I see a motor. So that will deter the traffic problems.
Okay. Yeah, I trust you to manage those budgetary issues. I just know overtime on a continuous basis gets expensive. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions from council. Crystal, anybody from the community wish to make a comment at this time?
No, there are no hands.
Okay, so we'll go move on to council comment and discussion. Councilmember Rack, you'd mentioned you had something that you wanted to remark on.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to just thank the chief for their presentation and staff for working for like this out of the box thinking. I think it's a good way to approach both community policing and also the traffic enforcement. I was going to suggest that potentially we add a little bit more funding to this to give some flexibility for the department in terms of for traffic saturation. So if things are working well, there are certain events or certain times that we don't have to come back to the drawing board. So I was thinking we sort of go from the $82,000 to $100,000 of additional funding. So a small amount of just $18,000 to just give some flexibility to the chief to deploy if things come up or change, or if something, we get some hot spots. That was just my thought on that. I want to suggest since we're doing that.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Councilmember Rack, I'd rather we wait and if this motion goes forward, see how it goes and maybe revisit it in 6 months. And then if we want to add more money, we do so at a later date. It seems to me, based on what Chief Bell is saying, is that this is well thought out from her experience and feedback from her staff. So I'll trust the recommendation personally. That's my perspective. Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm generally in support of what Adam is suggesting. My only question is the extra $18,000 enough? And what kind of flexibility would it provide? Would it be more than enough? Would it not be enough? If we're looking for, extra support for additional events and that sort of thing, I'd be interested to hear what Chief Bell's thoughts are on that.
So with just the 82,000, I did some calculations. So it's about 600 hours total for the entire fiscal year. So if we add the 18,000, I'd have to do the math, but it's for every 12-hour shift, it's about $1,000 on overtime, about. So for me, I think that, if we go with the recommendation that Councilmember Rack said, it would get us back to the original 250,000 that was deployed when this program started. So we're not really going over that 250 mark, but it would create some flexibility for us. And even if I had a motor that stayed over, like for example, we utilized overtime during the eucalyptus celebrations, and we had a motor go out there for two motors go out there for 2 hours instead of one motor for 4 hours, right? That's more efficient with 2 for 2 hours. So that's the flexibility that we're talking about, is that if I have the extra time and money, then we can put more people, and we have resources in Woodside that can come over after they're done with their shift and team up with our motors and hit the hot spots.
So that would give you a little bit of breathing room?
Yes, a little wiggle room. And
wiggle room, I like that term. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I guess my perspective on this is, as far as additional resources, not additional resources, I mean, I do trust that Chief Bell put a lot of time and thought into this recommendation. So typically, I would agree that, approving the recommendation is a rational thing to do and adjust as we move forward. My question though is, I think I've heard a strong, our downtown is going through a transition right now, and we're working on a lot of issues. And there is a lot of concern from business owners about accessibility to their businesses. You heard all our discussion about the parklets, et cetera. And I know one real pressure point our Vice Mayor McDowell mentioned it, our short-term parking spaces. And, I think I think there's probably a broad consensus in this council that those short-term parking spaces become actively policed, and that we are allowing businesses to get that inflow of customers as they need it. The dry cleaner gets the drop off, et cetera. So I guess it's my question to you, Chief Bell. Will your recommendation allow you to rigorously, along with everything else you're foreseeing for this CSO, will they also be able to really save the day with regard to enforcing these short-term parking spaces?
Yes, and that would be my vision, is that, they could chalk the tires in front of, whatever business it is, go in, check in with the owner, and then set their alarm and then go check that parking. So that is a part of our vision, is to really have that individual proactively enforcing the parking enforcement, but also they could utilize their partners, because we have other CSOs throughout the city, that they could communicate, hey, I just chalked the 700 block of Laurel, can you go check on it in 20 minutes because I've got to do this thing. So it just really helps to have a person down there more consistently.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you, Chief Bell. So I guess I'm largely agnostic. I guess I would mostly approve the recommendation as presented here.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. So yeah, it seems to me kind of the main issues really are around the parking enforcement, right? We've kind of changed the striping downtown, and I heard from many of the retailers their concern that it's not necessarily working. In fact, maybe this is something for Stephen to take a look at, but there was a 10-minute sign where the curb wasn't green, so I'm sure you're going to get to that, but maybe we could also take a look at the, if we need to make some configurations to different types of parking, since now we're going to open it up again, how can we optimize the parking down that way? Maybe that's part of the medium-term plan as well.
Yes, that is something we'll need to look at.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
and
so.
Madam Mayor, that is something
Yes.
that our CSO can communicate with Public Works when they're on their foot patrols, that they notice something that is, that needs to be fixed, that can be addressed quicker because someone saw it faster.
Great, okay, thank you. All right, Vice Mayor McDowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I apologize for asking this clarifying question, but Councilmember Rock, I just wanted to circle back with you. I had to log off for just a quick second, and your recommendation was to do option 3, but were you suggesting a different amount? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear that specific part.
Sorry, I was, thank you for the question. I was suggesting that we go with the staff recommendation, but that we increase it by 18,000 to allow the chief some more flexibility in terms of the traffic saturation. And also when she mentioned about eucalyptus and other things, I think it just gives flexibility versus us having to go back again to bring this item up again if necessary, versus it just gives some more flexibility to her, and it wasn't a large amount from a budget standpoint. So that was my thought around that.
Okay, so you're saying $100,000 then
Instead of 82, correct.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciated Chief Bell's mentioning of eucalyptus too, because that was an example of something that came up and we needed to put resources towards it very quickly. And I was grateful that we could do that and that Chief Bell could come through for the community in that way. So I would support that. Thank you.
So to that point, if I could just ask Jeff a clarifying question, because tonight's agenda item is not eucalyptus. It's about downtown. And I know we have another work effort underway with respect to eucalyptus. So Jeff or Greg, could you weigh in on that and how that pertains to this particular item?
Well, I can confirm that we do have another effort underway on eucalyptus. We haven't at the staff level connected that. So I think it's just sort of the past experiences that people are speaking to right now. Mm-hmm. But I'll let Greg weigh into any issues in terms of how far out we can get on this conversation in terms of public noticing.
Yeah, I think my understanding of the discussion is it's a dollar amount. It's not necessarily how you're not directing staff to how to apply the money. It's I think I agree with Jeff that it's more like examples of what it could potentially be used for if it were needed. So I think I don't see a problem changing the amount from a Brown Act perspective.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Just want to make sure we're staying tried and true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. At this point, I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
Motion, hold on, sorry, I have to unmute, find the document again. 1 second, sorry. I move to adopt ordinance.
Resolution.
Oh, sorry, resolution. Sorry, I gotta find it here. Adopt resolution 2021 I'm sorry. I guess it just has maintained the current model, right? Or oh, I see.
No, you're going to 3, number 3.
Oh, sorry, got it. Thank you. It's late. Number 3, adopting resolution 2021-69. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing amendment to the Law Enforcement Services Agreement with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office for the Downtown Services Unit program for fiscal year 2021-2022, approving a full-time community officer, increasing the appropriation by $100,000 funded by the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Rack, second by Collins. Any further discussion or comment? Okay, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Okay, Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. Okay, so the next item is consideration of adopting resolution approving the Alameda de las Pulgas landslide repair project number C-1751 plans and specifications and authorizing the advertisement for bids. And the presentation will be made by Grace Lee, City Engineer. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Grace Lee, City Engineer. I'll be giving a brief background on the Alameda de las Pulgas landslide repair project. Next slide, please. Back in February of 2017, a series of storms caused erosion and a landslide adjacent to Alameda de las Pulgas. That's in the back of St. Charles Church. At the time, our maintenance crew tarped the area just to make sure that there's no further soil saturations to stabilize the area. Next slide, please. The recommended repair for the slide is to add sub-drains and bench fill the area in a keyway design. Typical design is shown in front. For the past few years, staff has been seeking FEMA grant and subsequently Federal Highway Administration grant as well. At this point, it does not look like we'll be getting any federal funding, but we are moving forward with the project. After advertisement, staff will bring back the project for contract award sometime in September and hope to conclude and complete the project before the wet season. Next slide, please. The action before council is to adopt a resolution approving the plans and specifications and authorizing the advertisement for bid for the Alameda de las Pulgas landslide repair project. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple quick ones. First, I didn't see any dollar amounts in the staff report. Is there any kind of engineering or guidance estimate going out with this bid?
Yeah, so the engineer's estimate is $350,000. We're hoping that is a little bit outdated. This was designed back in 2018, but we decided to we'll know the actual cost once it's advertised and now to bid.
Okay, but we're like in that zone. So, and then my only other question is like can you just take us through, that's a lot of money. Why is this the city's problem exactly? Like, where are I didn't see a survey. Is this all city land? And, is it just because it's abuts our road or something like that? Can you just walk me through why we own this problem?
Sure. And there was a survey done as part of the plan, so we know exactly where this landside area is. It is a downslope of Alameda Dels Pogus. The upper portion of it is right away, and the lower portion of it is an easement in private property, but in easement. And so the easement, we believe, is for us to access and maintain the roadway. And our concern with the landslide is that it might undermine the Alameda Dels Pogus roadway.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's an easement. So it's the bottom half is owned by, I guess, St. Charles, and we have an easement to get on there to maintain that.
That's correct.
Okay. And was Alameda, was that constructed was this a built up grade? Is that an artificial slope that's there?
It's definitely a built up grade. And we're assuming the easement, the access is because it would be hard to, the slope is supporting the roadway, and we need to maintain it from the slope side as well.
Yeah, got it. So it seems like we probably constructed that whole thing at one time, and that's that. So yeah, it makes sense. We own the problem. Thank you.
Yes, we did in the 1970s, early 70s. Alameda was widened, and then in the early 80s, in the big El Nino year, there was a slide there previously, almost in this exact location, that we had to repair. So this is like the second time that we've had to repair this area, which is, as pointed out, supports that roadway. And there's an issue if we don't do something here, there's an issue of our roadway kind of sliding down the hill and causing a huge disruption to traffic and possible damage downhill too.
Got it. Well, I use that road every day, so I'm on board. With it not sliding down the hill.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions from council. Crystal, are there any members of the public who wish to make comment on this item?
Yes, there's one hand at the moment. Debbie Baldocci, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been advocating for this repair with Public Works for a while, and they've been, unbeknownst to me, they've already been working on that. But that area is directly at the base of the Black Mountain site, and we walk by there, and that is just so prone to erosion there. It's very steep. And like other people, we're concerned about the collapse of Alameda, the roadway there, in the event of like an atmospheric river after all this period of drought. So the only thing I would ask Grace Lee to comment on is whether or not the undertakings are going to be sufficient to hold that slope in place, especially if the heavy construction equipment on Black Mountain causes vibration or other effects uphill from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. Grace, is that something that you can answer now, or something that you could potentially follow up with Debbie to answer her question at a later time?
I can give a short answer and can follow up with Debbie later as well. Any construction that Black Mountain does, they would have to monitor and ensure. We usually require them to have a before survey and an after survey. So any damage caused by their construction is theirs to repair. As for this landslide, we did do 2 geotechnical borings, and it's generally believed that this is caused by the storm saturation, and not so much as any other vibration or movement. It's really just saturated soil during those intense storm events.
Okay, thank you. Crystal, any additional members of the public wish to make a comment on this item?
No, no further hands.
Okay, any additional comment or discussion from council? All right, seeing none, is there any interest in making a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt resolution 2021-70, a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving the Alameda de las Pulgas landslide repair project number C1751, plans and specifications, and authorizing the advertisement for bids.
I'll second that.
Okay, so moved by McDowell, seconded by Dugan. Any further discussion or comment? All right, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Okay, Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
And Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. Okay, that brings us to item 11E, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the Burton Park batting cages, project number C2001, plans and specifications, and authorizing the advertisement for bids. I see Councilmember Rack has his hand up. Councilmember Rack.
I need to recuse myself because I live within 500 feet of Burton Park.
All right, thank you. Crystal, when we're finished with this item, if you could text Councilmember Rack so he can come back for the last two items, that would be helpful. Okay, and we will be taking a report from Amy Newby, Parks and Recreation Director. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. So tonight, for the final item of the meeting, I would like to introduce Nate Ritchie with Calendar Associates, our consultants on this project. Nate will be taking you through the design process for the new batting cages at Burton Park. He and I will be available for questions following the presentation.
Thanks, Amy. So we prepared plans for a new batting cage at Burton Park. I'm going to give you a short presentation, which I described the design process that we went through. The next slide. So these are images of the existing batting cages out there today. The image on the left shows the batting cage from Woodland Avenue. And then the picture on the right shows where we are proposing to put the new batting cage in the open lawn area there. Next slide. These images show the cage in a little bit more detail. The one on the left, you can see it's very close to the existing trees out there. That's a redwood grove right there. And that's really that's the main reason it's causing it to be in such a poor condition. So on the slide on the right, you can see that the surface inside of the cage, there's a lot of root damage where the roots have uplifted the surface there, and that's causing a tripping hazard. So that's what we're trying to remedy here. Next slide. This is the proposed plan, and we studied several locations, and this is the one that we came up with after some feedback. And you can see it's pushed much farther away from the tree canopies. It's actually outside of all the canopy there. We had received feedback from stakeholders and also the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Commission, and we incorporated all their comments into the design here. So the main thing with the cage is that it's aligned with the foul line fence on the baseball field there. The new cage is larger. It went from 25 feet wide to 30 feet wide. And then there's a concrete entrance area on the right and also an accessible path of travel from the sidewalk at Woodland. Next slide. This is a photo of a cage that's similar to what we're proposing. So it's got two separate hitting bays on the interior, and they're completely separated from each other. And then also there's black chain link fencing. And the cage that we're presenting or that we're proposing at Burton actually has an angled roof. This cage has a flat roof, and that's the main difference there. And we chose an angled design so that if baseballs are hit on top of the cage, they'll roll off to the sides. We prepared the plans and submitted them to the building department, and we got that included structural calculations for the design. We got approved in June, and construction could start in September, and it would last for about 2.5 months. And at this point, I'm happy to respond to any questions anybody has.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a very quick question. So I assume this project budget is covering the demo of the old cage, but does it also cover the rehabilitation of that land since we're moving this? I just want to make sure, you know, it's kind of an opportunity. We're getting more park back closer to Woodland Avenue like that, and just want to make sure that's going to be put in a good place.
Yeah, currently we're proposing to the existing surface condition in there is a mulch, and so that we're going to extend that condition to where we're going to fill in the old cage, and we're going to extend the surrounding condition to fill in that footprint.
Okay, and Amy, you're happy with where the park will be on the other side of this?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any additional questions from council. So Crystal, are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment?
No, there are no hands.
Okay. Any further discussion from council? Vice Mayor McDowell?
Thank you. I just wanted to say how appreciative I am for the inclusive process. I know that all the different sports leagues weighed in and the Parks and Rec Commission weighed in and in fact submitted some edits during the last review. So I appreciate that flexibility to really hear out the community. We heard from Craig Strong at the beginning of our meeting about how important baseball is to our community. And I think this will just be a wonderful addition. So thank you for the hard work.
Yeah. I'm Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I'll just echo that. It's a great addition to the park. My son used the old one, and this new one will help the next generation of great San Carlos ball players. So that's exciting. And I also I love the private public partnership around this as well. And just do thank Premia Capital and Prince Street Partners who are funding this. Really, really appreciate that. Those kind of efforts go a long way to help keeping San Carlos great. And I will say one of the ways I'm a geek is I actually like construction drawings, and this has been a nice year. So earlier this year, got a firehouse with a fire pole in it. Loved seeing that, and now I have a set of construction plans for a batting cage. So having a good year on the construction plan nerd front. Thank you.
Big and small.
Yes.
Diversify you.
Yeah. Councilmember Collins.
Madam Mayor, I just wondered if you're ready for a motion.
I just wanted to just kind of echo my thanks to Amy and team on this. I know we got feedback a while back on the need for this, and I really appreciate the active listening and responding. And I also want to just throw a shout out to the softball players, the girls out there. Girls sports is super important. So I'm really hoping that they get equal access to these cages as well. All right, Councilmember Collins.
You ready for a motion now? All right. I move to adopt resolution 2021-71. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving the Burton Park Batting Cages project number C 2001 plans and specifications and authorizing the advertisement for bids.
I'll second that.
All right, forwarded by Collins, seconded by Dugan. Any further discussion? All right, Crystal, can you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack is recused, and Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes. All right, and Crystal, when you're ready, if you could just bring back Adam. Let him know we're done with that item. Okay, so this brings us to our last item, agenda setting. The item is consideration of agendizing an item increasing transparency for commercial and housing development. I'm not sure who forwarded this, so.
That's my item, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, that's my item. Thank you. So I was just thinking about how we've got a significant amount of commercial development and housing development development coming up over the next sort of pick a number of months, years. And I wanted to make sure we were doing as much as we could to sort of inform the public about this beforehand. I find sometimes the public, while it won't be perfect, sometimes we hear about things, the public feels like they hear things after things are approved. So for example, I think we require signage at a development site after a project is approved versus maybe when it's submitted to planning. And so I checked with a couple of the other cities. So San Mateo and Burlingame, I spoke with council members, and with Redwood City, I've been told that they require some signage at properties beforehand, so that the public can understand kind of what's happening at different sites. And then also, I just think as we look at sort of our website, what are we doing in terms of, informing the public and encouraging public engagement with some of these larger projects that we have. I know we're doing the East Side Vision Plan, but there are other projects happening around town. And I don't think it needs to happen for every single development, but some of the larger scale ones that we could sort of establish a threshold. So I just want to agendize that. I think it's something worth looking into so that we're more transparent with the public, and wanted to throw that out for council consideration.
Yeah, sure, Madam Mayor, if I could, I would just chime in to say, as a council, it feels like we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community, and even in my short time on the council, as far as no one, as far as people being a little bit surprised at how things have been rolled out. So I don't know how we benchmark against other cities or how other cities handle things, but I appreciate Councilmember Rack bringing this forward. I think it's worth us taking a look at it, especially as we roll into all these very significant projects coming down the pike.
Thank you. And I see Vice Mayor McDowell's hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with John. I appreciate Adam bringing this up. I think that looking at ways to increase transparency with our community is really important. Continuing to put projects on our website is something that I've talked a lot about. But I think that having, something out actually at the project site where people are driving by would be an interesting thing to take a look at. So I would support bringing this back for further discussion.
Okay. So that's that then. That brings us to the close of the meeting.
Sorry,
so,
through the chair, we did have a public comment on that last item.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Okay.
So let me go ahead and bring in Debbie. You should be able to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I'd just like to thank you so much for putting on this on the agenda. And that was one of the things that me and many of my neighbors are asking about, from the perspective that most people don't go to planning commission meetings, or they won't go to some of the other specialty meetings on development. So they rely a lot on the city council for getting the primary news. So when people learn things like there's going to be 3 million square feet of commercial development, and then they subsequently learn that some of it is in a flood zone, that there's toxic water wells in some of it, it just feels like, wait, what's happening? So if the city council wouldn't mind just letting people know or ask questions about that in your venue, rather than directing us all to go to planning or the east side, or when we bring up sea level rise, we mean flooding. So rather than say, go to see what the county's doing, it's the city that sets permits, that sets zoning, that allows construction in these areas that may be inundated. So you're the body that can say yes or no to whether that's safe or not. But then if there is something that goes wrong and sea level rise comes up and there's flooding, then it goes to the taxpayers or the county to solve the problem. So all we want as a community is have you as the city council tell us about those things, look at the risk, and then let us know what the mitigations are, just to put everyone's mind at ease. So thank you very much for putting that on the agenda and understanding what it is that people want to hear about and why the city council is the forum for how the most people will hear about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Lots covered tonight.
Thank
And we're
you.
ending-
Hopefully in person next time.
I'm sorry?
And hopefully in person next time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So with that, so I just want it noted that we're ending this very robust agenda before 10:30. There was no extension requested. And our next meeting will be a summer recess to give our staff a much needed break. That doesn't mean the work isn't happening, because it still is. City Hall is open. But we will be reconvening in person on August 23rd, Monday night. And it'll be hybrid. So if people enjoy zooming in to the call, that will still be available to you. And if you want to come in person to City Council chambers, we will be open and conducting the meeting in person. So thank you all to staff for making that happen, and moving forward in these crazy times with this different format, and then iterating on it as we move back out of the pandemic. So thank you, everyone, very much. Great discussions this evening, lots accomplished. And we will see you August 23rd, if not before. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Enjoy your break.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good night.
Good night, everybody.